Chapter 1401. His life in the capital was pretty good. As the program team had helped to hold a press conference to explain Kiki's kidnapping, Poplar Fruit was harassed a lot less by the reporters. It was also because of this that Beijing's sky was still covered by what everyone jokingly called the military parade basket. The air quality was surprisingly good, unlike the smog at the end of the year in the future. During this period of time, Beijing hosted the IAAF World Track and Field Championships. The timing was a little off, so don't mind it. This was the largest sports event held in Beijing after the Olympics. However, Poplar Fruit did not expect that his dad would send over tickets from the Where Are You Going production team. His family, along with Lu Yi, Hu Jun and Lin Yongjin's families, were invited to watch the competition together. During this period of time, there must be suspicion of hype, because very soon, Weibo was flooded with photos of a few children happily sitting in the audience and playing around. However, Poplar Fruit felt that it was pretty good to be able to watch the competition for free and have a get-together with a few of his close friends' families. Of course, Kiki was the first to watch. The little girl did not pay much attention to the competition. She did not know the history of the contestants and could not understand them, but she had a lot of fun with her friends. However, Poplar Fruit watched with great interest. Among them, Su Bingtian made it to the final of the 100m race. Bolt narrowly won the 100-meter race, and Bolt was knocked off his feet by the cameraman after winning the 200m race. These exciting scenes would become precious memories of this year's championship. What surprised Poplar Fruit the most was that when he left the competition hall after the competition, he coincidentally met Bolt, who helped him translate and solve the problem of getting in and out of the venue. After a round of conversation, the world's best sprinter, Bolt, actually said that he knew Poplar Fruit. That was too rare. After all, even Poplar Fruit's long-distance teaching had not really spread out, nor did it cover Bolt's home country, Jamaica, in North America. However, after a detailed chat, Poplar Fruit found out that Bolt had donated millions of US dollars to support sports education in his home country. Poplar Fruit's public, non-profitable Chinese language learning video had received unanimous praise from many Africans. Jamaica was the world of Africans, so naturally, the video was used by a Jamaican track and field school that he had donated. Of course, such a distant relationship could not be compared to Poplar Fruit's help just now. Bolt's impression of Poplar Fruit increased greatly because of his help just now. The two of them exchanged contact information and took a photo together to verify their friendship. This was the most precious reward from the championship. Later on, it caused quite a stir on Weibo, but that was not worth mentioning. In August, Yangguo was finally able to get out of bed and walk without the help of others. Seeing that he had recovered more than half, Feng Beibei finally agreed to discharge Poplar Fruit. They returned to Yangqing together and continued to recuperate at home. In this way, Feng Beibei could send Poplar Fruit to school during the day, and with the other teachers, they could do the final preparations for the first year of the Eurasian language department. When they returned at night, Feng Beibei could also use the kitchen to cook some delicious food for Poplar Fruit. She would not give up until she turned Poplar Fruit into a white and fat pig. Needless to say, after learning from the chef for half a month and showing off their love in the kitchen with Poplar Fruit, Feng Beibei's cooking skills soared. It was almost enough to threaten Poplar Fruit's first place. Of course, this first place referred to the rankings of the three members of their family. Over at school, although Poplar Fruit was injured, it was a blessing in disguise. Due to his injury, he focused on his studies instead. His thesis, which was progressing at a snail's pace, finally had a breakthrough. When Poplar Fruit returned to Yangqing, he personally handed the 300,000-word thick manuscript to Chen Zhongdai. Chen Zhongdai was stunned. Reverse research on word splitting. The logical barrier between Chinese and English was the title of the thesis. However, in the 300,000-word manuscript, Poplar Fruit described how he bypassed the thick logical barrier. In the end, his research was only a thin layer of paper. From this, he concluded that as long as a Chinese person's mind could learn to be flexible at a certain stage of growth, then the difficulty of learning English would be reduced to a thin layer of paper. Similarly, when foreigners learn Chinese, as long as they change their way of thinking according to Poplar Fruit's method, the difficulty of learning Chinese would be reduced to the lowest level. Although it could not be compared to other languages of the same origin, Chinese was no longer the most difficult language to learn. Extending it further, if you want to translate Chinese works, Chinese movies, or other cultural consumer products into foreign languages, as long as you use the method described by Yang Guo, it won't make foreign readers and viewers feel awkward. Of course, this was not absolute. It was hard to say on a cultural level, but at least it was possible in terms of direct perception. This is an epic-making thesis. After Chen Zongdai finished reading, he looked at Poplar Fruit with a complicated expression. He said emotionally, "If this was overseas, this thesis would be more than enough to make you a full professor." However, this was not possible in China. Even associate professors had to work hard to gain experience. Who would be willing to let a kid reach the heavens in one step? Of course, Poplar Fruit, who was already a lecturer, had produced a thesis like this. It was almost certain that he would be selected as an associate professor this year. However, Chen Zongdai was not satisfied. He felt that Poplar Fruit deserved more. Although he did not say it out loud, the old man had secretly made up his mind. Even if he had to throw away his old face, he would fight for Poplar Fruit. However, Poplar Fruit and Chen Zongdai had overlooked a problem. That was the value of Poplar Fruit's thesis. One had to know that once Poplar Fruit's thesis was published, it would reverse China's passive situation as an importer of cultural products. It might create a cultural export market worth hundreds of billions. However, Poplar Fruit could not gain any benefits from this thesis because this thesis was destined to not have any patents. Poplar Fruit could be the founder, but no capitalist would pay a single cent for Poplar Fruit. It might even have an impact on New Translation Road publishing firm. Poplar Fruit did not consider these because he did not care much about the concept of money. Moreover, he was still confident in New Translation Road. After all, even if he told everyone the method, other publishers would not be able to do it as well as New Translation Road. The publication of the thesis was still handed over to Chen Zongdai. Poplar Fruit plunged into the Eurasian department that he was leading. The Eurasian department was the second professional language department, so they did not need to recruit students through the college entrance examination. However, the preparation of teachers was very important. Poplar Fruit participated in the interview of many young teachers. Of course, they were all older than Poplar Fruit. The young Poplar Fruit might not be able to suppress the older teachers. Yang Guo's way of doing things was very rough. That was to pick a good teacher and then personally take the field. He would use the field that the other party was most proud of to crush the other party's confidence. That way, the other party would be obedient to join Dongshan University. Not convinced? Then you have to prove that you are better than me. Chapter 1402. He had suffered severe internal injuries and had been shot 7 times. One of the bullets had brushed past his heart and almost took his life. With such a serious injury, Poplar Fruit's recovery was already considered fast, but it was still not fast enough. Poplar Fruit went to the hospital for a checkup with the accompaniment of the filming team of Where's Dad Go? The doctor requested that Poplar Fruit rest for another week. He could not be too tired, nor could he engage in any strenuous exercise. This also meant that if Poplar Fruit wanted to film the show, they would have to wait for another half a month. Why half a month? Because if they did not film this week, Poplar Fruit would have to gather in Beijing the next week. The military parade the week after that was a few hundred times more important than Where's Dad Go? But if they waited for another half a month, Where's Dad Go? Would face the crisis of being suspended. The 8 episodes that had been recorded were expected to be broadcast before the end of August. And in September, even if all the variety shows were suspended for the first week, there would not be any new shows to broadcast from the second week onwards. Even if Poplar Fruit rushed back from the military parade to film, he would not be able to make it in time for production. Don't be fooled by how the production team had vowed to wait for Poplar Fruit to recover and return. Even if they suspended the show, it would not be a pity. But that was just a slogan. After all, the 7th and 8th episodes, which were Rosy Cloud's journey, Kiki's kidnapping became popular even before it was broadcast. The previous episodes had already broken through the viewership ratings of China's Voices peak night. No one could predict how high the viewership ratings of these 2 episodes would reach, but it would definitely create a new miracle. But if they did not continue, the attention would gradually be wiped out. The forced suspension of the military parade for a week had already made them feel the pinch. If they were to suspend it for another week or two and rebroadcast it again, they would be thankful if the viewership ratings did not fall below the record of the third season, let alone break through or maintain the previous viewership ratings. And if the recording did not go smoothly, if they continued to suspend it, the last 8 episodes of this season would be equivalent to having to start all over again. Mango TV could not afford to lose that. Therefore, they threw aside all the big words they had said in the past. The production team needed to find a solution. Of course, it was not a replacement. If it was a replacement, no one would watch their show. During the meeting, someone made a very strange suggestion. Why not let Fong Beibei replace Poplar Fruit? In ancient times, Mulan had joined the army on her father's behalf. Now, with Fong Beibei acting on her husband's behalf, it was very feasible. Moreover, Fong Beibei was not a nobody. A few years ago, she was considered an internet celebrity in China. She was a straight-A student goddess. Although she was married like Sister Milk Tea, she kept a low profile. In the eyes of the public, she had maintained a good reputation. Producer Xia and several directors thought about it and felt that this idea was feasible. They contacted Poplar Fruit and asked him to persuade Fong Beibei to take Kiki to participate in the recording of the 5th journey. Fong Beibei did not have any objections. Her only worry was Poplar Fruit. Because she took Kiki out, Poplar Fruit would be alone at home. He would feel lonely and helpless. Haha, how could that be? You think too much. Poplar Fruit laughed and rubbed Fong Beibei's head. He said, "Don't worry, my body is almost recovered. I can take care of myself now. You go to record the show, and I will be fine at home." In the end, Fong Beibei and Kiki took the car arranged by the production team and went to the old revolutionary area of Xinjiang, which was only 500 kilometers away. Before leaving, Fong Beibei and Kiki were somewhat reluctant to part, especially Kiki. She hugged Poplar Fruit and almost cried. "Listen to mommy." Poplar Fruit helped his daughter with her hair and said with a smile, "Call daddy tonight, okay?" After they left, Poplar Fruit drove to the school and the publishing house according to the original plan. There was nothing much to say about the school. There was still a long time before school started, and the new students had not yet arrived at the school. Poplar Fruit planned to wait until he came back from the military parade before organizing teachers from his department to visit the students. However, the publishing house had to introduce Zheng Yujia's achievements after she returned to Yangcheng. The 20% shares that Poplar Fruit transferred to Zheng Yujia allowed Zheng Yujia to completely control the publishing house. At the same time, it also announced that Tungsun Literature's plan to annex New Translation Road Publishing House was ruined. However, Zheng Yujia did not fall out with Tungsun Literature. There was no need for her to become enemies with the largest online literature supplier in the country. However, the internal cleansing of the publishing house was still necessary. Although Pang Yu had fled to the United States, the people she left behind were all expelled from the publishing house. Most of the capable people in the middle management were still left behind. Fortunately, New Translation Road had been quietly working in the industry for a few years and had a certain foundation. Although there were some losses in the cleansing this time, it was not to the extent of hurting their vitality. Moreover, New Translation Road's most famous God-level translator, Poplar Fruit, was still there. It was destined that New Translation Road would not lose its market and appeal. Learning from her mistakes, Zheng Yujia had painstakingly studied the way of operation after suffering a loss. When Poplar Fruit came to the publishing house to see Zheng Yujia, she was commanding and arranging for the finance department from her aunt's company to move in. Zheng Yujia had been firmly controlling the foreign marketing team and the domestic translation department. This was the key to her not collapsing before Poplar Fruit woke up. Now that she had tightened the financial power and controlled the controlling shares and decision-making power, the publishing house was as solid as a mountain of gold. This way, Zheng Yujia could use financing or other means to weaken Tungsun Literature's controlling interest in the future. These foundations could make it easier for her to do things. However, Zheng Yujia's condition was not very good. She had not left the publishing house for more than half a month. The dormitory-like lounge in her office became a place for her to wash up and rest. However, even so, Zheng Yujie still slept less than 4 hours a day. The blood vessels in her eyes and the dull skin on her face due to lack of sleep made Zheng Yujie look even more haggard than Poplar Fruit, who was badly injured. Poplar Fruit looked at her high-spirited but exhausted appearance and felt very uncomfortable. "Why are you working so hard?" After the meeting, the people in the meeting room left one after another. Poplar Fruit and Zheng Yujie stayed behind as usual. Poplar Fruit could not help but say a few words to her. Poplar Fruit did not come this time to see Zheng Yujie, while Feng Beibei was away. If he wanted to see her, he had been here before. This time he came more because of the people from Tungsun Literature. A few executives who had shares and dividends also came for the meeting. He appeared to support Zheng Yujie. "If I don't work hard, how can I live up to your trust?" Zheng Yujie rested her still pretty face on her hands and asked with a voice as bitter as an arrow. Chapter 1403. Zheng Yujie was probably the only person in the world who didn't even go home to look for her parents after being bullied. Actually, if she revealed that her father was Zheng Mingxing and got the Industry and Commerce, Public Security, and Fire Department to communicate with Tungsun, even if Tungsun was one of the top 3 bat companies in the country, they wouldn't dare to lay their hands on the daughter of Guangdong Province's leader. At the very least, they would have to consider the consequences of this matter. But Zheng Yujie didn't want to use her father's connections, because she had her own concerns about the freedom to pursue love. If she used her father's connections, it would mean that her own company would fail, and her family would start to interfere with her matters. Then there would be no more peaceful days. This was also the reason why Zheng Yujie was so desperate, and why she spoke so bitterly. Poplar Fruit could see the "isn't it all because of you" smile in her eyes, which gave him a headache. "Can't you let me talk properly? No matter what, you've already got the situation under control, so don't go on like this. Treat yourself better." Poplar Fruit gently persuaded. "Look at your skin right now. If you don't sleep properly, you'll enter the aging cycle soon." Zheng Yujie was shocked as she touched her cheeks and hurriedly stood up. "I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm going to wash my face and change my clothes. Let's go eat together later." After speaking, she ran to her office without looking back. Poplar Fruit knew that the meal she was talking about definitely wasn't a work meal. It was rare for Poplar Fruit to come out alone, and Feng Beibei and Kiki weren't in Yangcheng. Zheng Yujie definitely wanted to seize the opportunity to have a meal with Poplar Fruit alone. Western or Chinese food was fine. She didn't even bring her assistant. Originally, Poplar Fruit wanted to refuse, but when he saw Zheng Yujie's haggard appearance and the sadness in her eyes, he couldn't help but sigh and didn't say anything. However, Poplar Fruit had to wait for a long time. Zheng Yujie took a hot bath, then put on her makeup and picked out her clothes. It took her more than an hour to come out of the small room. Of course, this 1 hour was worth it. Compared to when she went in, Zheng Yujie came out looking much more radiant. Zheng Yujie's slanted eyes were outlined with eyebrows, her sharp nose was accentuated by the shadows, her light pink moisturizing lip gloss, her long dress with straps, and the latest off-white Gucci bag slung over her shoulder. Zheng Yujie's beauty seemed to be a fusion of fashion and youth. Compared to her real age, Zheng Yujie looked 5 or 6 years younger. All of a sudden, Yang Guo was stupefied. "How is it?" Zheng Yujie pinched her dress and twirled it around, looking at Poplar Fruit proudly. A fragrant wind entered his nose. Poplar Fruit coughed twice, awkwardly rubbed his nose and said, "Actually, you put on so much makeup, why don't you rest a little more? Your skin will naturally recover." Zheng Yujie obviously knew that Poplar Fruit said that on purpose. Poplar Fruit was not a beauty lover. She stared at him in annoyance, flicked her short hair and walked in front. Poplar Fruit drove, and Zheng Yujie chose a high-end Western restaurant. Although it was a little expensive, the environment was good, and the service was also very high-end. The waiter handed over 2 dishes and left, without even looking at Poplar Fruit. Of course, the waiter was a foreigner with blonde hair and blue eyes. He probably wouldn't recognize Poplar Fruit even if he saw him. The menu was labeled in both Italian and Chinese. It was high-end and very down-to-earth. and would not be picked on by picky chauvinists. Poplar Fruit looked at it for a while. When he looked up, he found that Zheng Yujie was holding the menu, leaning against the comfortable back of the sofa, and sleeping with her eyes closed. Poplar Fruit sighed softly, called the waiter, ordered the menu, and said softly, "No wine. I still want a glass of Barolo. This, and this is for her. This is for me. Serve the dishes slowly, it's okay." He spoke in Italian without the slightest intention of showing off, but it still made the waiter feel a lot more comfortable. He looked at Zheng Yujie, nodded to Poplar Fruit, and didn't take the menu from Zheng Yujie's arms. He turned around and walked away. Poplar Fruit also leaned against the sofa, drinking water and looking at Zheng Yujie, but his mind was thinking about other things. After about half an hour, the waiter slowly served the dishes. At this time, the inevitable sound of tableware being touched made some noise, and Zheng Yujie slowly woke up. She pretended as if nothing had happened, wiped the crystal-clear saliva from the corner of her mouth, and asked calmly, "How long have I slept?" "Only half an hour. After dinner, I'll send you back to rest," Poplar Fruit said without hesitation. Zheng Yujie didn't stubbornly, and nodded obediently, and said from the depths of her throat, "Okay." During the meal, they almost didn't talk much and just ate calmly. Those who didn't know would think that two strangers were sharing a table. But Zheng Yujie felt very happy to be able to look at Poplar Fruit's face while eating Western food. It was so romantic that her face, which had only drunk a glass of wine, blushed. After dinner, Poplar Fruit drove Zheng Yujie directly home, instead of going back to the company. Although she had a cleaner at home, she hadn't been back for nearly a month. Worried that it was unsafe, Poplar Fruit accompanied her up. "Sit with me for a while." Zheng Yujie pretended to be pitiful and pulled Poplar Fruit's hand. For her character, it was indeed a bit pretentious. But from her experience with Poplar Fruit, it might be a kind of true feelings after drinking. Poplar Fruit, however, was soft-hearted. After several negotiations, Poplar Fruit promised Zheng Yujie that he would sit on the side and wait for her to fall asleep before leaving. In the end, it was because of guilt. Poplar Fruit knew that he owed the girl in front of him too much. "She's not here today. Can't you stay in my house for a little longer?" Zheng Yujie had already washed off, and was wearing pajamas, sitting on the bed, with her long legs dangling, gently swaying. "Sleep." Poplar Fruit pointed to the pillow and said. Zheng Yujie pursed her lips, flipped open the quilt and crawled under it. There was air conditioning, so she covered herself with the quilt, only revealing her pretty head. Her charming eyes looked at Poplar Fruit, and said, "I seem to be hungry again. Can you make me a midnight snack?" "Sleep." Poplar Fruit rolled his eyes. She clearly ate so much just now. How could she be hungry again? This was an excuse. "I can't sleep. I want you to tell me a story like Kiki." Zheng Yujie closed her eyes, then opened them again. "Sleep." Poplar Fruit was helpless. "This bed is still very big. Why don't you sit on it?" Zheng Yujie stretched out half of her jade white arm, and hooked her finger at Poplar Fruit. "Sleep." Chapter 1404. The camera should be focused on Fang Beibei and Kiki, who were recording the show in Shijiang. They arrived at Shijiang. The next day, they got on the production team's car with the other 4 pairs of fathers and sons, and headed to Jinxia village. Of course, it was worth mentioning that Nina came again. Nuyi had a high fever before the show's recording and couldn't come with his father, so his sister came in place of his brother. In this way, there were 2 more golden flowers in the show. In the show, Kiki's previous experience of being kidnapped was only briefly mentioned in voiceover. The other fathers also didn't talk about this issue, mainly because they were worried that the terrible memory would stimulate Kiki. But Kiki didn't care. She didn't have any trauma. But when she was in the car, her mood wasn't high. When she got out of the car, she kept holding Fang Beibei's hand, unlike her other friends who were lively and lively. Her melancholy expression made one's heart ache. "I miss Daddy," the village chief asked. Kiki looked at the village chief with sad eyes and said. Fang Beibei put her hands on Kiki's shoulders, squatted down, and said in Kiki's ear, "Look at this camera. Daddy is looking at you. You have to be happy. Daddy will be happy when he sees you. Then he will recover faster, right?" Kiki nodded sensibly. Although they had already met the day before and Lu Yi and the others had also gotten to know Fang Beibei in Beijing, in front of the camera, everyone still pretended that this was the first time they had met and gave Fang Beibei a warm welcome. It was obvious that Fang Beibei was still a little nervous, as it was her first time facing so many cameras. But everyone gave her a lot of tolerance and helped Fang Beibei blend in. Of course, as the recording slowly progressed, Fang Beibei quickly got used to the rhythm of the reality show. Don't forget, Fang Beibei is a fan of variety shows. Poplar Fruit was dragged to watch many shows by her. It could be said that Fang Beibei was even more familiar with the context of these variety shows than Poplar Fruit. Her previous experience in the student union and the relief station had also unknowingly allowed Fang Beibei to develop a natural temperament for dealing with big situations. However, the recording this time seemed to be more difficult than the previous 4 trips. This was because the production team had organized a military training with the revolutionary base. The adults and children separated. It was fine for the adults, as those who had gone to school had basically been exposed to military training, but the 5 little ones, including Kong Kong, did not know anything about standing at attention, standing in formation, and marching in unison. After changing into the military uniform, Fang Beibei looked valiant and formidable. She was soft and weak in front of Poplar Fruit, but now she had become a strong woman. Just as she said with a smile at the beginning, "Today I am a man." Fang Beibei stood tall and straight in a military posture, working hard to complete every action that the instructor asked of her. Of course, she kept thinking about the responsibility of taking care of Kiki, so she turned her head to glance at the children from time to time. This caused her to be reprimanded by the instructor several times. In the middle, the female instructor suddenly said, "Kiki, why are you crying?" Fang Beibei suddenly felt uneasy and turned her head. The instructor called her a few times, but she did not come back to her senses. No matter how anxious she was and how much she wanted to rush to Kiki's side to see what was happening. This was military training, and there were strict rules. Fang Beibei could not do anything about it. In reality, Kiki did not cry that much. She only cried because she did not perform well in one round and did not receive a red pentagram, so she felt wronged and her eyes turned red. Seeing this scene, the audience felt that it was a little strange because Kiki did not care so much about the results of the competition in the past. The little girl was worried that her father would get hurt, and even worried that her father would not participate in the competition. No one knew that Chi-Chi's strong desire to win was actually because she wanted to perform well so that her father would be happy when he saw her. When she received the red pentagram for the first time, Kiki's unhappy little face bloomed into a bright smile. But this time, when she did not receive it, Kiki was extremely sad, as if she could already see her father's disappointed expression in front of her. The little girl's inner world was very complicated, but in the end, Kiki did not cry out loud. The little girl pursed her little mouth and tried hard to control her hands and feet, so that she would not move unconsciously. She also tried hard to walk in step with the instructor. Although under the camera, Kiki's performance was very nervous and cute, making everyone laugh, no one knew that Kiki had put in a lot of effort. Looking at the little girl's stiff hands and feet, it was clear that Kiki valued this competition very much. Of course, the funniest one was not Kiki. The one who walked in step and made everyone laugh the most was Kong Kong, who could not change his hands and feet. When the instructor asked him if he felt awkward, Kong Kong shook his head doubtfully and confidently. That muddle-headedness was really the opposite of Kong Kong's smart and domineering temperament. In this hot and humid summer, military training was not easy. The children were soon sweating profusely. Even Kiki, who was very serious, could not help but reach out to wipe the sweat off her face. Gradually, the youngest Xian and Nina could not hold on anymore. Nina even cried. Under the guidance of the assistant sister, they went to the room next door to rest. But Kiki and the 2 big brothers were still trying hard to hold on. In the end, of course, they received a lot of red 5-pointed stars from the female instructor as a reward. This caused Chi-Chi, who had been tense all this time, to finally smile. When they were dismissed at noon, Fang Beibei was finally relieved, because Kiki gradually returned to her cheerful personality. In fact, Fong Beibei and the other fathers were not much more relaxed than the children. When they were standing in line, they were yelled at by the instructor. When they were doing the human bridge push-ups, they fell and became dizzy. Although the human bridge push-ups were very difficult and required 5 people to cooperate well, and the responsibility was shared equally, Fong Beibei felt very embarrassed. Because she did not need to bear the weight, but after she bent down, it was difficult for her to support herself. She felt that she was dragging the whole team down. If it was Uncle who came, he would be the key pillar of the team, right? Unlike me. Fong Beibei blamed herself in her heart, which also made her more energetic. Together with the team, they worked together to complete the push-ups. After half a day, Fong Beibei felt very tired. Although she used to train with poplar fruit, she was a girl after all. How could she really compare with these big and burly men? However, even when it was time to rest at noon, Fong Beibei still had to take care of Kiki for lunch and help Lu Yi take care of the quiet Nina. Even at noon, she could not rest peacefully. She was worried, so she sneaked over to the window to see if Kiki was sleeping obediently. Fong Beibei didn't pay attention to these little details, but the camera recorded them all. Through the television, all the audience began to really understand this stepmother, who had once caused a lot of discussion. Many people sighed with emotion. Only 22 years old. It's really not easy. Chapter 1405. In fact, Fong Beibei's worries had already gradually dissipated, and Chi-Chi had also gradually found her own smile among this group of happy-go-lucky companions. At noon, she and Nina were pulled to the chairs by Brother Kong Kong. The 3 of them sat in a row and watched Xian and Dejun's martial arts performance. Of course, it was mainly Xian who was jumping around. He was the kind of person who was usually shy, but in front of others, he was crazy. Being surrounded by his friends made Xian very excited. Just like Queen Kai's dance song, "Spin Jump, I Close My Eyes." Xian spun and kicked. He couldn't stop playing. There were many mistakes in his movements, but his friends were watching with great interest and cheering nonstop. Kiki's interest was piqued by Xian. The little girl giggled and ran up to Brother Dejun, who had become a pure spectator, and pulled him down. "It's my turn, it's my turn." Kiki was like a dove taking over the magpie's nest. She directly occupied the stage and performed her kicks like Xian. Unlike little chubby Xian's clumsiness, Kiki's kicks lacked the joy of laughter, but the little girl's white and tender long legs moved gracefully and fluidly. It was pleasing to the eyes, and it was equally exciting in the eyes of the audience. At noon, the adults couldn't help but feel tired, and went to rest. However, this group of children who were no longer controlled by the adults were all like wild horses. They played around for the entire afternoon, and still looked very energetic. They would probably all yawn at night. In the afternoon, everyone was ready to go again. However, the military training in the morning was not repeated. The event in the afternoon was called beach landing. Although it was called beach landing, it was actually using bamboo rafts to play drifting. The stream was very shallow and not very urgent. However, for the adults, this was not a small challenge. After all, no matter how shallow the stream was, the depth of the stream was not even past the adults' stomachs. If the children who were only a meter long fell in, they would definitely disappear with a plop. Of course, the production team was also prepared. The children and adults all wore thick life jackets. Then, there was a lifeguard on each bamboo raft. There were also several lifeguards on the bamboo raft. With such a setup, there shouldn't be any major problems in this 1-meter-deep creek. Kong Kong and Nina were in one team, Kiki and Dajun were in the other team, while Xian and his father were in the other team. When the children got on the bamboo raft, their reactions were also very different. Nina cried out in fear, and only calmed down in Lu Ye's arms. Kiki and Dajun, on the other hand, were surprisingly excited. Kiki was sitting on top of it. She was shrieking because of the shaking, and at the same time, she was smacking the water with her small white hands. She was having a lot of fun. However, Fong Beibei was under a lot of pressure. She had to cooperate with Lin Yongjian at the front of the bamboo raft to start moving. At the same time, she had to pay attention to Kiki, who was sitting in the middle of the bamboo raft. Protecting Kiki was her responsibility. The more dangerous the situation was, the more Fong Beibei didn't dare to be careless. If something happened to Kiki, how was she going to explain it to Poplar Fruit? But at the same time, she also had to shoulder the responsibility of working hard to complete the mission with her teammates. She was here to replace Poplar Fruit to record the show. Although she was a girl, she definitely couldn't drag her teammates down because of her gender. However, the journey was full of twists and turns. At the beginning, there was a small accident where the bamboo raft bumped into the back. When they were in the middle, the helmsman in front, Lin Yongjian, accidentally drove the bamboo raft to the high ground in the middle of the creek and ran aground. "It's okay. Sister-in-law, you don't have to move. I'll do it." Lin Yongjian took care of the woman and jumped down without hesitation. He tried his best to push in front, but he couldn't push it. Before Fong Beibei came, Lin Yongjian was definitely the weakest out of the 5 fathers. After all, he was an old man and wasn't as strong as a young man in his 20s or 30s. Lin Yongjian was a little anxious. He raised his head and turned to look for the staff on the bamboo raft to ask for their help. However, Fong Beibei was standing on the bamboo raft and felt very guilty. She felt that she was dragging Lin Yongjian down. If it was Poplar Fruit on the bamboo raft, not to mention whether Poplar Fruit could move the bamboo raft alone, at least the two of them could work together. They wouldn't have to stand on the bamboo raft like her and watch foolishly. "Teacher Lin, you can do it." Kiki and Dejun were cheering for Lin Yongjian together. Of course, the two children didn't understand the hardships of the adults at all. They just felt that it was very interesting. Fong Beibei gritted her teeth and moved gently. She first put one foot down and then let go of the other foot. The weight on the bamboo raft was lifted, and she also went into the water. "Aya, sister-in-law, why did you come down? You're getting your clothes wet." Lin Yongjian felt that the bamboo raft in his hand was strange. He raised his head and saw that half of Fong Beibei's body was soaked in the water. He shouted in annoyance. Lin Yongjian was a very male chauvinistic man. He was born in a difficult and chaotic era. When he was recording the program, he always felt that he was as traditional as a block of wood. Now he felt that he was the big brother. Poplar Fruit was not here, so he should take care of these women. Just like Guangong, after losing contact with Liu Bei, he rushed thousands of miles to protect his sister-in-law. He even protected his sister-in-law's safety in Cao Cao's camp. Lin Yongjian felt that he had failed in his duty by letting Fong Beibei go into the water to help. But it was true that after Fong Beibei came down, the weight on the bamboo raft became lighter. The two of them worked together and pushed the stranded raft back into the water. This efficiency was much better than Lin Yongjian doing it himself. "Mama, let me help you." Kiki realized that Fong Beibei was not easy. The young lady sensibly pulled Fong Beibei's hand and helped her climb onto the bamboo raft. She even used the part of her clothes that was still dry to help Fong Beibei wipe the traces of water from the stream or sweat on her face. "Thank you, Kiki." Fong Beibei was actually quite tired. She was up and down, and the blanket on her back had also become heavy because it was soaked in water. However, she smiled at Chi-Chi. At this moment, she was very happy that she did not become a burden. Lu Yi and Hu Jun, the two old partners, were the fastest. They were the first to reach the destination. When Kong Kong reached the end, he directly pulled the bamboo raft and relied on the buoyancy of his life jacket to float on the water. He was very proud of himself. Fong Beibei and Lin Yongjian worked together to get second place. As for Zhou Shimin, who was fighting alone, he pitifully fell behind. Fortunately, he joined Fong Beibei and Lin Yongjian's team to prepare dinner together. Although she was exhausted, Fong Beibei gritted her teeth and persevered. Lin Yongjian helped to start the fire. Zhou Shimin was in charge of roasting potatoes. She and Kiki washed the vegetables and made the vegetable chicken soup. I think Mama's cooking is the best." Although there was no evaluation, Kiki proudly leaned into Fong Beibei's embrace. While eating, she smiled like a flower. Fong Beibei hugged Kiki and smiled without saying anything. All of today's hard work was worth it. Chapter 1406. On the day when Fong Beibei and Kiki were exhausted, Poplar Fruit didn't stay at home obediently. He drove to the military base to visit He Wenjua and Yang Zhengdong. He had visited not long after he returned to Yangcheng. This visit was mainly because he was worried about Yang Zhengdong and wanted to see how he was recovering. Although he had a good relationship with these big brothers before, it wasn't until this time that he truly had a life-and-death relationship with them, just like he had with He Wenjue before. In order to save his daughter, the three brothers almost lost their lives in Myanmar. He Wenjue and Ming Sanhua were still in good condition. Although they were hit by the bomb, they only had slight concussions. Before Poplar Fruit returned to Yangcheng, the two of them had already returned to the military base for training. Yang Zhengdong was slightly miserable. He was directly shaken down from the third floor by the explosion and fell on a pile of rubble. His external injuries were not serious because he had a bulletproof vest, but his ribs were directly broken into several pieces. Fortunately, he was lucky. After his ribs were broken, they did not pierce his heart and lungs. Otherwise, he would have died directly. After returning, his condition had stabilized, but Yang Zhengdong seemed to have lost his soul. Sometimes, he would sit in front of the window and look at the sunset with a small sunflower that his comrades had given him. It was as if he had just fallen out of love. Everyone knew the reason. His beret was destroyed in the factory fire. The cleanup team that was sent out later only managed to pick up a piece of scrap metal. Yang Zhengdong was a sniper, and he loved his gun as much as his life. It was as if a soldier who specialized in training military dogs saw his comrades sacrificed. Naturally, he would feel terrible. It's no use trying to persuade him. This is a hurdle in his heart. It's like falling out of love. He has to cross it himself. He Wenjue told Poplar Fruit this. He Wenjue also lost his beloved gun in the fire. However, he was fine and managed to control his emotions quickly. Poplar Fruit also knew this feeling, or rather, he could roughly understand what it was like. He Wenjue thought that he wouldn't be able to get his two Miaodao back, but the cleanup team picked them up from the courtyard and handed them over to He Wenjue to bring back to Yangcheng. Although Yang Zhengdong's melancholy was not directly related to Poplar Fruit, this regret was indeed brought to Yang Zhengdong by Poplar Fruit. If it weren't for the fact that they had to rescue Poplar Fruit's daughter, Yang Zhengdong and the others wouldn't have fallen into such a dangerous situation. Of course, they wouldn't have been injured and lost their guns. Yang Zhengdong didn't blame Poplar Fruit. When Poplar Fruit visited him for the first time, Yang Zhengdong pretended that nothing had happened and chatted happily with Yang Zhengdong. However, Poplar Fruit couldn't let this matter hurt big brother Yang Zhengdong. This time, he had come because He Wenjue had finally completed the task he had entrusted to him. It's all here. In the corridor of the hospital, Poplar Fruit and He Wenjue met sneakily like an underground organization. He Wenjue chuckled and stuffed an envelope into Poplar Fruit's hands. Poplar Fruit opened it and glanced at it, then smiled and nodded at He Wenjue. Poplar Fruit had gone in by himself. Yang Zhengdong was lying on the bed reading a book. The cover of the book said Heizi's Poetry. A burly elite of the Special Forces was sitting on a clean bed, smelling the fragrance of flowers and reading the poems of the literati of the last century. There was no need to mention how strange this scene was. Poplar Fruit is here? When Yang Zhengdong saw Yang Gua, a smile appeared on his face. He put down his book and smiled. Why are you here again? Didn't I tell you before? My injury is nothing serious. It takes 100 days to recover from a serious injury. My bones are injured, so I'll be fine after a month or two of rest. Look at you coming here twice a week, as if I'm seriously injured. Yang Zhengdong happily took the fruit from Poplar Fruit's hands. He didn't stand on ceremony with Poplar Fruit, but he still said roughly, "Don't worry, I'm not that weak. I won't be like a little girl, crying and needing someone to watch over me every day." Poplar Fruit smiled. When he first came in, Poplar Fruit thought that Yang Zhengdong was going to give up his army and throw away his pen. Now, at least he had found Yang Zhengdong's military temperament. He smiled and said, "I'm going on a business trip tomorrow. If I don't come and see you, how can I be at ease? How many days have you been here? Why aren't you recuperating? Going on a business trip again?" Yang Zhengdong snorted and said, "Who's your leader? I'll tell him. You can't treat people like humans. Don't be afraid. Beat him up and he'll be honest." Poplar Fruit quickly comforted Yang Zhengdong. This soldier's temper was still so bad that ordinary people couldn't accept it. It seemed that reading poems was just an illusion. He smiled and said, "It has nothing to do with my leader. I went voluntarily." "Let's talk about you. How's your mood recently?" Poplar Fruit said. "You came to see me, but you didn't ask about my injury. Why are you asking about my mood?" Yang Zhengdong asked curiously. "I'm not a little girl. Why are you so anxious about whether my mood is good or not?" This was a bit of male chauvinism, but in fact there were many men in the army who had this tendency. It couldn't be helped. The army was full of men. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "How's your injury? I asked the doctor outside just now. The doctor knows you better than you do. What do I have to worry about? Look at yourself now, reading Heisey's poems. Is this something you should do?" Yang Zhengdong wasn't angry. He stroked the book cover and said to Poplar Fruit, "This was sent by a girl in my hometown. She wanted me to cultivate my temperament. Now that I've read it, I realized that it makes sense." "Girl." Poplar Fruit suddenly remembered that Wenjua had said before that Yang Zhengdong had a girlfriend in his hometown. It seemed that it was time to talk about marriage. He just didn't expect that the girlfriend was an artistic young woman. When Poplar Fruit was thinking about how an artistic young woman and a rough soldier could be together, Yang Zhengdong had already flipped open the book of poems. With his rough voice he started to read sadly. "In the night, I have 3 sufferings. Wandering, love, survival. I have 3 blessings. Poetry, throne, Sunday. Wait, you've fallen out of love?" Poplar Fruit asked in surprise. "Nope." Yang Zhengdong shook his head and explained himself. "I think the poem should be like this. I have 3 kinds of love. Women, brothers, and my gun. I have 3 kinds of suffering. I am injured, my brothers are killed, and my gun too. It fits my current state of mind." What a ridiculous poem, and it even rhymed. This was something that Heisey couldn't do. But Poplar Fruit looked at Yang Zhengdong's rough face and felt uncomfortable. He patted his head and stopped chatting with Yang Zhengdong. An envelope was thrown in front of his chest. The strength was very good, and it just covered the book of poems. "What's this?" Yang Zhengdong curiously opened the envelope and took out a few photos. He shouted in surprise, "My gun! It's my Barrett!" Yang Zhengdong's gloomy temperament was instantly swept away. He sat up in surprise and wasn't afraid of pulling his ribs. He shouted and looked at Poplar Fruit. "Look." Poplar Fruit laughed. "In my cupboard. In my cupboard." Yang Zhengdong looked at Poplar Fruit in surprise and said, "Poplar Fruit, quick, give me a slap. I'm not dreaming, right?" Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "You're still injured, I don't dare to hit you. But I can responsibly tell you that you didn't see it wrong." "That's not right. I've seen it before. My gun was burned." Yang Zhengdong finally calmed down. He frowned and looked at the identical Barrett in his military cupboard, and asked in confusion, "You don't have to care about that. Anyway, you just need to know that your gun is back." Poplar Fruit laughed. Chapter 1407. Wenjua had special channels to buy an identical Barrett. Coincidentally, Poplar Fruit wanted to compensate Yang Zhengdong, who had helped him so much but was still sad. The two hit it off and secretly prepared for a few days to give Yang Zhengdong such a big surprise. This made Yang Zhengdong, who had read Heisey's poetry collection and cultivated a hipster for a few days, instantly rise up. He held the photo and almost ran around the hospital barefoot. His serious rib injury seemed to have healed all of a sudden. Of course, Yang Zhengdong still needed to continue recuperating. However, after his spirit recovered, Yang Zhengdong no longer had that kind of melancholy of the setting sun. Instead, he radiated a fiery vitality from his bones to the outside. She believed that he would recover even faster, right? After Poplar Fruit saw that Yang Zhengdong was better, he felt relieved and went home. He had to pack his luggage and wake up early the next morning to let Song Jiwen send him to the airport. Oh right, Song Jiwen, this guy had to be taught a lesson recently. This guy, after having a wife and a child, became lazy. He got off work on time and went home on time every day, no longer going to any entertainment venues. Moreover, after he was seriously injured, he only came to see him 3 or 4 times, actually quite a few times. And every time he visited, he only said a few words about his injury. He kept talking about his son all the time. He was more like a child slave than him. After returning to the old revolutionary area in Xinjiang, it was finally time for the new recruits to rest after working hard for the whole day. But before that, there was a summary meeting. The village chief and the instructor started to calculate the results of the adults and children. Of course, the results referred to the number of red stars they obtained in a day. In the children's group, Kiki did not disappoint. Through her hard work, she obtained the most red stars. Her reward was a big red army kettle. The kettle was not pretty, but the little girl held it tightly in her arms, her face full of joy. Show this to Papa, he will be very happy, Kiki thought. Poplar Fruit was more than happy. He had brought this kettle with him to school. It was filled with hot water. When he taught the students, regardless of whether they were thirsty or not, he would take it out and drink it. He was so proud, because it was his daughter's hard-earned prize and she gave it to her father. Of course, this was all in the future. Feng Beibei was not as outstanding as Kiki. After all, she was only a woman, but she worked very hard. Her results were not first or last, so she did not need to be punished. The ones to be punished were Lin Yongjian and Kong Kong and Xianxian, who stood out to prevent Sister Nina from being punished. Kong Kong and Xuanxuan's punishment was to stand guard at the door and prevent others from entering the house where they were stationed. As for Lin Yongjian, he had to run 30 laps around the courtyard. But the punishment was not painful. For Kong Kong and Xianxian, during this process, they encountered many strange tests from the unscrupulous program team. For example, someone wanted to go to the toilet, or someone sent a chicken feather letter. A letter with a chicken feather stuck on it. Under the upright Kong Kong's leadership, the two little sentries bravely resolved one crisis after another. This made the audience all over the country give them a thumbs up. Lin Yongjian also gained something. While he was sweating profusely, his son encouraged him. Even Dejun, who was not on good terms with his father in the past, held his father's hand and finished the entire run. It was not easy. The production team very emotionally edited this scene. Seeing Lin Yongjian and Dejun running round after round without complaining about the pain or tiredness, who knew how many viewers were moved by them. Interestingly, when Lin Yongjian was being interviewed later on, not only did he not feel pain by the punishment, he even had a happy smile on his face. He could not even close his mouth as he expressed his gratitude to the production team for providing him with this opportunity. It really made the distance between him and his father become very, very close at that moment. This was also the improvement of Dejun and Lin Yongjian. Of course, in the courtyard, the story of Kiki and Feng Beibei was still playing out. Kiki was supposed to take care of Nina as the older sister. But because it was nighttime, even though Nina was very close to Kiki, she could not help but miss her father. Nina cried sadly, which aroused Chi-Chi's longing for her father. The two little girls began to sob. This kind of emotion infected each other, and the more they cried, the sadder they became. Luckily, Lu Yi and the other fathers were just next door. Feng Beibei also quickly ran over from her small room. In order not to let my daughters affect each other, Lu Yi brought Nina to the children's big room to comfort them, while Feng Beibei brought Kiki to the small room to comfort her. In the past, at the earthen building in Min Province, the audience had seen the scene of Kiki being comforted by Feng Beibei. But that was just from hearing. Now the audience could finally see, with their own eyes, how Feng Beibei comforted Kiki, who missed her father, as a mother. I know you miss your father very much, but he really can't come this time. He still needs to recuperate. When he's better, he can accompany you to participate in the program. Although she was a stepmother, Feng Beibei was really not worse than a real mother. She had a good grasp of Kiki's way of thinking. Feng Beibei gently covered Kiki's face with her palm, wiping away the tears on the little girl's face. We still have to call our father later. We can't cry. We can't let our father hear about it and worry about us at home, right? Kiki had stopped crying. She nodded and listened to Feng Beibei attentively. The camera gave Kiki a close-up. The little girl's face was white and red, and she was so beautiful that it made people want to take pity on her. Seeing that Kiki had stopped crying, Feng Beibei smiled and said, "Oh right, I think I saw you sleeping with the boys at noon." She was talking about when they were fooling around at noon. Xian, Dajuan, and Kiki's three best friends slept together. Kiki even decided to sleep in the middle. Fang Beibei's role seemed to have changed from a mother to a caring big sister. She blinked her eyes and giggled. That's not okay. If your father knew, he would be very sad. How can my Kiki sleep in the same bed with other boys? Later, she imitated Poplar Fruit's tone and pretended to cry. Chi-Chi covered Fang Beibei's eyes as if she was trying to deceive herself. She twisted her body and said shyly, "It's not like that. We were just playing together. Then we were just playing for a while." That's not good. Girls can't sleep in the same bed with boys. Fang Beibei smiled as if she was teasing Kiki. She said to her, "When you grow up and get married, you can." "I don't want to get married. I want to be with Papa and Mama Ma forever," Kiki said coquettishly as she hugged Fang Beibei's neck. "That's not for sure. You'll want to find a boyfriend in the future," Fang Beibei said with a grin. It was as if the two of them were not mother and daughter, but close sisters. Kiki secretly looked around, hugged Fang Beibei's neck, and whispered in Fang Beibei's ear, "Mama Ma will call Papa later. Don't tell Papa, okay? I'm afraid that Papa will be angry." If she didn't tell him, the camera would capture it. Poplar Fruit saw it for sure. The audience looked at the little girl in amusement. The little girl's innocent look was very cute. "It's not honest not to tell your father." Fang Beibei pretended to hesitate, and she said, "But if you pinky promise me that you'll be careful in the future, then Mama can promise you." Pinky promise, pinky promise. The little girl happily pinky with Fang Beibei. There wasn't a trace of sadness on her face now. Fang Beibei was even more skilled than Poplar Fruit at hiding education in chatting and joking. Don't forget, when Poplar Fruit went to work, Kiki would follow Fang Beibei most of the time. Chapter 1408. On the second day of the program's recording, the children and adults were brought to a large open space by the village chief. First, they were tricked into bragging. Then they were told that their wives had arrived. It was like a bolt out of the blue. They could not swallow the words they had just said. What should they do? That's right. Regardless of whether the forefathers would kneel on the keyboard when they returned home, this time, the program team had taken the initiative to invite the mothers group over to participate in the program's recording. Of course, this was not the first time. The previous 2 seasons also had the same experience. However, no one expected that they would come so early. Furthermore, the audience did not expect that not only did the mothers group come, they even came twice. They even participated in the recording for the last leg. However, this was a story for later. The arrival of the mothers group was especially magical. The village chief actually asked the forefathers to identify their wives by touching their hands. This seemingly absurd little segment had produced a lot of unexpected emotions. For example, Lu Yi. The first person he touched was Anna's hand. The moment he touched it, he was very sure that it was his wife's hand. The camera panned to the two of them tightly holding hands. There was also Lu Ye's affirmation and the blissful smile on Anna's face. The phrase "holding hands and growing old together" was probably the most appropriate one to use on this foreign couple, right? Among the audience, quite a number of them had learned about Lu Yi and Anna's love story through social media. Of course, at that time, most of them were concerned about the gossip between Lu Yi and Sienna, so they did some extended reading. However, what really touched them was this moment of holding hands. You can't see me, I can't see you, but with 2 hands holding hands, their hearts were connected. If not for the love that had never changed for the past 10 years, they would not have such a strong heartbeat when they touched each other. The sweet atmosphere between Lu Yi and Anna had an impact on many of the viewers in front of their televisions. Of course, it also had an impact on Fang Beibei and Kiki who were at the scene. When the village chief announced the arrival of the other children's mothers, Fang Beibei had a moment of suffocation. She thought that Poplar Fruit had also come. She thought that it would be a surprise. Kiki also had the same thought. She came back to her senses and pulled her mother along to look for traces of her father. But he couldn't find it. Behind the curtain, there were 4 smiling aunties. It was her little friend, Nui. However, Kiki was not happy to see Nui. Instead, she was disappointed that she could not see her father. Fang Beibei was the same. She really wanted to see the sudden appearance of the poplar fruit. Yesterday's hard work made her miss the poplar fruit even more. It was not a deep longing that could be resolved with a phone call. However, in the end, the village chief still told them, "Poplar fruit didn't come. Really, Kiki, I'm very sorry too." Indeed, poplar fruit did not come with the four mothers. He was still high up in the sky. Yangwa didn't come, which made Fong Bebe and Chi-Chi extremely disappointed. Chi-Chi pursed her little mouth and almost cried. How could she not feel uncomfortable when she saw other families have their mothers come and reunite with their families, but she could only rely on each other, with her mother. But the program still had to be recorded. Fong Bebe was afraid that Kiki would continue to be depressed, so she hid her disappointment in the bottom of her heart. She put on a smiling face and pulled Kiki to join the fathers in guessing their wives. Of course, the two of them had to guide the fathers. This was because other than Lu Yi, who was fast and accurate, the other fathers were blindfolded and lost for a long time, but still could not find their wives' hands. This process was still very joyous. For example, Lin Yongjian accidentally touched Lu Ye's arm or a staff member's hand. For a world champion like Zhou Shimin, he was still trembling and did not dare to touch it, afraid that he would go back and kneel on the washboard if he touched the wrong hand. Under such a joyous atmosphere, Kiki slowly got rid of her previous emotions. She also happily guided Fong Bebe. After the wife recognition segment was over, it was finally time to choose a house. Yesterday, it was a shared bed, so for the first time, the fathers chose a house for the second day of the recording. And for the house selection segment, they once again added in a lovey-dovey princess carry game. The moment they heard the game's explanation, even the audience began to feel indignant for Fong Bebe. Motherfucker. So the genius goddess came to record the program just to take care of the children, and then watch the four of you be lovey-dovey, right? These audience members, most of them were still single. Seeing them being lovey-dovey made their grievances explode. Look at Zhou Shimin. Every time he squatted down, he would be able to enjoy a kiss from his wife on the cheek. The damage was multiplied by 100. Then look at Lu Yi. After the competition ended, he immediately received a French kiss from Anna. The damage was multiplied by 100. The single dogs were about to cry from the abuse. Of course, Fong Bebe did not have it easy either. In order to compete for a house, she had to go behind the back of the assistant sister that Kiki had chosen, who was very good to the children, and compete with a group of lovey-dovey couples. In fact, Fong Bebe was not even older than the assistant sister. She could be said to be the youngest person present other than the children. However, Fong Bebe still gritted her teeth and persevered. She even cooperated with the cameraman from time to time to create scenes that made the audience laugh. Kiki. Fong Bebe finally completed the competition. She was panting as she pulled Kiki's hand and squatted on the ground. She did not even want to move. She said, "Luckily your father didn't come. Otherwise, with his poor health, he wouldn't be able to compete." Carrying Fong Bebe and squatting down, a healthy poplar fruit would definitely not have a problem. However, his wound was still recovering. If he were to force himself to compete in such a competition, his wound would definitely reopen. Kiki sensibly used her sleeve to wipe the sweat off Fong Bebe's forehead. She obediently hugged Fong Bebe and said, "It's okay. I'll be with Mama Ma." Fong Bebe smiled and said, "But Mama may not be able to win. Mama only finished 6, and then she had no strength. Maybe we'll have to live in a worse house." "I'm not afraid. Papa and I have lived in a bad house before, but I'm not afraid." Kiki giggled and said, "If Mama Ma is afraid, I can protect you." "Kiki, you're so good." Fong Bebe hugged the sensible Kiki and kissed her happily. Fortunately, although they were ranked last, Fong Bebe and Kiki were still the first to choose a house because of the modesty of the other 4 fathers. Then Kiki did not even think about it and straightforwardly chose the first house. Even Fong Bebe did not expect that the first house was the best among the 5 houses. It was equivalent to the big house of an ancient official. "The house is very good. Really, it's better than I imagined. I thought that I would have to live in a thatched house with no walls with Kiki today." After sending off Kiki, who went to buy groceries, Fong Bebe came to her house and sighed with the camera. However, it's a pity that there are too few people here. It's a little uneasy. In other words, there was one person missing. If Poplar Fruit was also here, it would be a family of 3. How nice would that be? Chapter 1409. After visiting her own room, Fong Beibei did not stay behind to rest. Instead, she walked straight out the door. She turned around and asked the cameraman, "Where's room 5 in Brother Hu Jun's house?" Very quickly, Fong Beibei found room 5 in Hu Jun's house. Hu Jun and his wife, Lu Fong, were sitting in their small and shabby room chatting. The two of them were very calm and were not worried about their son's grocery shopping journey. They chatted casually. "Big sis Lu, Brother Hu." Fong Beibei peeked her head in and smiled as she pulled Lu Fong's hand and said, "Big sis Lu, why don't you come to our house for lunch?" "How can I accept that?" Lu Fong had not gotten used to the show's family's enthusiasm. She looked at the camera embarrassedly and smiled. "It's like this." Fong Beibei giggled and said, "Just now when we were choosing a house, thanks to your modesty, Kiki and I were able to choose the best house. After that, I took a look. In the end, you chose the worst house that Kiki and I were supposed to live in. In comparison, the school that Lu Ye's family lived in, which was the place where they trained and rested yesterday, Zhou Shimon's family lived in room 4 by the fish pond, and Lin Yongjian's family lived in a small building. Even if it could not be compared to Fong Beibei and Kiki's house, it was still many times better than Hu Jun's family's simple house. I've seen it all. Your family's kitchen is very difficult to cook." Fong Beibei felt bad, so after looking at the house, she ran over to check on the condition of Hu Jun's house. The kitchen's heated brick bed was not far from the bed. The environment was indeed terrible. "So, why don't you come to our house for lunch? Don't cook here. Our house is very big. It'll be more lively with more people." "Is that okay?" Lu Fong was a little hesitant. She actually wanted to go. After all, this room was indeed terrible. If they really cooked, the room would be filled with the smell of oil and smoke. Then they would not be able to stay there. Hu Jun didn't want to go, because with his male chauvinist character, he couldn't do something like troubling others. It's okay. Fong Beibei laughed. "Sister Lu, we can cook together. Kiki and Kong Kong probably bought different ingredients. It's rare for you to come here, so let's cook a few more delicious dishes for the children." "All right then." With such a warm invitation, Hu Jun and Lu Fong agreed. Hu Jun said, "Then wait for a while. When Kong comes back, we'll take him with us." This was to prevent Kong from coming back and not being able to find him. At this moment, the children were still in the market buying the vegetables and meat that their parents had requested. Kong Kong led Xian Xian in one group, Kiki and Nuai in another, and Dejun in his own group. Being in the same group as Kiki was the happiest thing. This was not only because of the pink friendship between Nuai and Kiki, but also because Kiki was there. No matter what the adults asked for, the little girl could recite the long menu like the back of her hand. Therefore, Kiki and Nuai's grocery shopping process was very smooth. In a short while, they had bought all the ingredients on Kiki's side, and a large portion of Nuai's. The rest was the portion on Nuai's menu that did not overlap with Kiki's. "Are we going back now?" As the big brother, Nuai could only follow behind his little sister Kiki. However, this scene was not out of place because from the camera lens, it could be seen that Kiki was obviously taller than Nuai. In these few months, the little girl had been working hard to grow. "No. You still have beef and salad to buy, but I don't want to buy those. So I'll go with you to buy them, then we'll go back." The logic seemed a little complicated, but following Kiki was the right thing to do. The little girl's basket was piled full of vegetables. It was not difficult for her to carry it, but it was a little awkward for her feet. She might as well use her slender arms to lift the basket onto her shoulders. However, the moment he tilted his body to the side, the ostrich egg that the village chief had requested to be tied to his waist with a net slipped out mischievously and fell to the ground, shattering into a pile of yellow egg liquid. In an instant, the atmosphere became tense. "Ah!" The little girl subconsciously glanced at the ostrich egg that had fallen by her feet. She did not know what to do and lowered her hands. In her panic, she did not have the strength to carry the heavy basket. Nuai was also stunned. He stared blankly at the ostrich egg, not knowing what to say. Kiki's mind was in a mess. One moment, she thought that she had failed the mission. The next moment, she thought that a small ostrich that could have hatched had fallen to her death. The next moment, she thought that if she had been more careful, the ostrich egg would not have broken. After a while, her father's disappointed expression appeared in her mind, as if saying, "Kiki, why can't you protect an ostrich egg? How are you going to protect your father in the future?" Her thoughts were a mess of tangled twine, stuffed into Kiki's little brain. No matter how hard she tried, she could not unravel them. The little girl squatted down with trembling hands, not daring to touch it. Her pitiful little eyes looked at the ostrich egg that had broken into pieces, but it could no longer be restored. It's dead." Nuayi's unintentional words brought Kiki back to her senses. She finally understood that she had gotten into big trouble. Sob, 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 sob. The little girl stood up, her hands frantically wiping her face, but even more teardrops formed a string and kept rolling down. Her pretty and fair face immediately became red and swollen from crying. That pitiful appearance made people unable to help but feel pity for her. Nuai seemed to have finally understood something. He did not say any more words but sensibly came over. As he patted Kiki's back, he comforted her. "Don't cry. It's fine." This was not enough. Kiki continued crying. Perhaps he had learned Lu Ye's big move. Nuai embraced Kiki and pulled Kiki into his embrace. At this moment, many girls watching TV had Mary Sue plots. They looked at their male idol Nuai with starry eyes, wishing that they could be the girl in his embrace. There were also many boys who were watching this scene with their girlfriends. They were being ravaged by their girlfriends. Look at them. Look at them. But in reality, this was not enough. Kiki was feeling terrible, because she had caused the death of a future ostrich. She was crying because of her father's disappointed eyes. This was not something that could be comforted by a little boy's embrace. It was not that it was useless, but Kiki paused for a moment. As she thought and thought, she began crying again. Those two streams of hot tears almost drowned the entire market. "Kiki." Far away, outside the crowd, Fong Beibei's voice came from Fong Beibei. It was like a ray of dawn. Chapter 14:10. Fong Beibei couldn't stay idle. After leaving Kong Kong's house, she didn't go back to her own house. Anyway, it was meaningless to just sit there and be bored. So she brought the photographer and excitedly went to find Kiki, who was going to buy groceries. The market wasn't too far away. It was only a few steps away. Before long, Fong Beibei arrived. From afar, Fong Beibei could distinguish Kiki's sad cries from the noise of the crowd. "Kiki! Kiki!" Fong Beibei was anxious. She parted the crowd and rushed over. Kiki also heard Fong Beibei's call. She turned around and saw the anxious Fong Beibei. The little girl broke free from Nuayi's arm and plunged her head into Fong Beibei's embrace. "Mama, sob sob." Kiki found someone to rely on. She became more and more sad, and tears quickly flowed out. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" Fong Beibei squatted down and let Kiki lean on her shoulder. Her soft left hand gently stroked Kiki's little head. She saw that Kiki was only crying and didn't seem to be hurt. Her anxious heart relaxed a little. Her egg fell. Nuai scratched his head and pointed at the egg beside him. He helped to explain. "It's okay. Kiki, don't cry." Fong Beibei sighed in relief. She smiled and gently patted Kiki's back. Kiki pursed her little mouth and sobbed. But my little ostrich is dead. It hasn't grown into a little ostrich yet. It's just an ostrich egg." Fong Beibei said gently. But it will become a little ostrich in the future." Kiki sobbed and said in a choked voice, "I killed it." "No, this is an ostrich egg. It's not for hatching young ostriches. Just like eggs, some eggs are for hatching chicks, but some are for cooking." Fong Beibei comforted her. "Don't blame yourself too much. I'm afraid that Papa will scold me." Boo-hoo. After thinking through the ostrich matter, the kind-hearted Kiki paused and said sadly, "Daddy won't scold you. Your father likes you so much." Fong Beibei comforted her. But I didn't complete the task. Papa will be very disappointed." It was only then that Chi-Chi's logic gradually became clear. Her cries gradually stopped, and only soft sobs remained. Aya, what should we do? At the side, Nui was a little impatient. Of course, he was not annoyed by Kiki, but he felt helpless and his temper was rising. You're crying now because you regret it, right? Fong Beibei held Kiki's little face and softly helped her analyze. You understand that you shouldn't be negligent, right? Kiki's big eyes were filled with tears, like snowflakes falling from a black gem. It was very lovely. She and Fong Beibei looked at each other and gently nodded. If there's a next time, when someone gives you a task, we have to always keep it in mind. We will never be negligent until the task is over, right? Am I right? Fong Beibei asked softly. I won't be negligent again. Kiki sniffed and said softly, I know I was wrong. Yes, our Kiki already knows her mistake, and I believe that if she encounters similar things in the future, she will definitely remember the lesson and remain careful and patient. Fong Beibei laughed. She spread out her hands and said, Kiki already knows her mistake and will change. How can your father bear to scold such a sensible and obedient baby? How can your father still feel disappointed? Right. Chi-Chi nodded her head vigorously, her confidence returning once more. The little girl smiled through her tears. She reached out to hug Fong Beibei's neck and twisted it a little coquettishly. She said in a cute voice, I'm not an obedient baby. Mama is Papa's obedient baby. Ahem. Fong Beibei's face turned red. She looked at the camera a little embarrassedly and reached out to pinch Kiki's little nose. She deliberately said with a straight face, Don't spread your dirty linen in public. Don't talk nonsense. Kiki giggled and said, I'm not talking nonsense. The two sisters looked at each other intimately and smiled. They were very close. Of course, Kiki's task was not completed yet. She still had to bring Nui to buy groceries. This time, Fong Beibei followed behind Kiki and accompanied them home after buying groceries. However, Fong Beibei did not help them carry the basket, because this was the children's task, and they needed to complete it independently. When they returned home, Nui was reluctant to leave. He wanted to play with Chi-Chi, so he left his parents and little sister at home and didn't care about them. The friendship between the two children was indeed deeper than other children's, especially when Poplar Fruit was recuperating in Beijing. The two families had the most interaction. Anna also frequently invited Fong Beibei to bring Kiki to their house for dinner. However, they could not stick together all the time. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei privately discussed this problem. Friends were fine, but there needed to be a certain distance. If they were always stuck together, it would be easy for problems to arise. Hence, Fong Beibei coaxed Nui to go home. She waved her finger mischievously and pointed at Nui's path home and said, Do your best, young man. Your future is the sea of stars. Please walk firmly towards your future path. The audience looked at Nui's back through the television screen and laughed heartily. Although Kiki and Nui's group had some twists and turns, overall, it was very smooth. Hence, they returned home very quickly. Fong Beibei brought Kiki to wash the vegetables, and was about to cook when Jun brought his family over. Brother Kong Kong. Kiki skipped into the courtyard to welcome them. Where are your eggs? Kong Kong asked as she pointed at Chi-Chi's stomach, which was only left with a net bag, and asked. Kiki's expression instantly collapsed. She pursed her lips and said, It's broken. Kong Kong waved his hand and said, It's okay. Look at mine. It's still fine. Everyone thought that he was comforting Kiki when he said it was okay. Who knew that President Kong Kong would not change his cold attitude and proudly patted the ostrich egg that he had protected so well. Kong, or you can't talk like that. Lu Fong laughed unhappily and gently patted the back of Kong Kong's head. There was one more thing that she did not say. If you talk like that, you'll be lonely for life. However, Kiki had already cast aside this thought. She curiously pulled at the bag in Lu Fong's hand and asked, Kong Kong Mama, what did you buy? The young lady was not afraid of strangers at all. She was very open and generous, which made Lu Fong very fond of her. There's drumsticks, they're all delicious. Kong Kong was excited at this time as he introduced the food. Kong Kong, you're here? Come, try Auntie's cooking. Fong Beibei tied a scarf and brought out a plate of stir-fried pork. She was not as good as Poplar Fruit. The dishes she stir-fried were Cantonese. Once it was out of the pot, the aroma overflowed and immediately attracted the two little gluttonous worms. "I want to eat, I want to eat." Chapter 14:11. Taking into account the difference in age, Hu Jun in 1968 and Lu Fong in 1969 were twice as old as Fong Beibei in 1993. Even Fong Beibei's parents weren't much older than Hu Jun and Lu Fong. However, it was difficult to judge people in the entertainment industry by their age. From their looks, Hu Jun and Lu Fong didn't look as old as they were in their 40s. On the other hand, Fong Beibei, who was already married, had the mentality of a good wife and mother. She looked young, but her temperament and behavior were mature. This made Fong Beibei and Lu Fong, who had a huge age gap, feel much closer to each other after meeting. Of course, when Lu Fong saw how virtuous Fong Beibei was, she didn't want to be outdone. She followed Fong Beibei into the kitchen. Hu Jun was left sitting alone at the square table in the courtyard. Kiki and Kong Kong were smiling as they knelt on the bench. They wanted to use their hands to grab Fong Beibei's dishes to eat. "Go wash your hands first." Hu Jun was rough but gentle. The moment he said that, the two little guys obediently ran to wash their hands. "This egg isn't comfortable. Can I take it off?" After washing her hands, Kong Kong leaned on the table, feeling a little awkward. There was an ostrich egg between her and the table. How could it be comfortable? "You can't take it off. What did the village chief say to you? Without permission, it's cheating." Hu Jun's words were a little harsh and intimidated the impatient Kong Kong. However, the effect was a little too much. Kong Kong pursed her lips unhappily and sat down on the bench a little gloomily. The enthusiasm from before had disappeared. "Brother Kong Kong, let me help you." Kiki ate a piece of meat and her mouth was full of oil. She grabbed another piece and handed it to Brother Kong Kong. Kong Kong raised her head and looked at Kiki. The cold and aloof President Kong Kong was actually not reserved. He was like a cat, throwing a tantrum while eating the meat that Kiki grabbed for him. "My mama's cooking is so delicious." Kiki didn't think it was a big deal. She was so immersed in the food that she couldn't extricate herself. Fortunately, Hu Jun stopped the two little ones in time and prevented them from eating to fill their stomachs. After being busy for so long, it was finally time for lunch. Of course, eating wasn't the main point. Taking advantage of this rare leisure time, everyone sat together and chatted. Lu Fong was more curious about the relationship between Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei. This was also something that the entire country's audience was curious about. After all, after the incident, Fong Beibei and Poplar Fruit were already together. Fong Beibei thought about it and said with a smile, "Our situation is special. When I first met Poplar Fruit, I had just graduated from high school. Because I was recommended to Higashiyama University, I came early to Higashiyama University to play. At that time, when I first saw him, he was carrying a child in his arms." Fong Beibei recounted. That child is actually me." Chi-Chi giggled as she pointed at her own face and laughed. "Everyone knew it was you." Yes, at that time, Kiki was only 2 months old. She was just a little one. Fong Beibei also laughed. Speaking of which, it was quite fate. Kiki liked me very much when she saw me. She let me hug her and even took the initiative to kiss me. Poplar Fruit said that Kiki was very clingy when she was young. Other than him, she wouldn't let anyone hug her. Fong Beibei smiled until her eyes turned into crescents. "I was the first. And I also stole Kiki's first kiss. Poplar Fruit still holds a grudge against me." Kiki shyly covered her eyes with her small arms, but Kong Kong was fascinated by the story. Lu Fong felt as if he was listening to a beautiful love fairy tale. He asked enviously, "So you two started dating at that time?" No. Fong Beibei waved her hand and laughed. "At that time, neither of us had the intention to date. I was just curious and took 2 photos with Kiki. When we left, we didn't ask for each other's contact information." And then? Lu Fong's interest was piqued by the twists and turns. Fong Beibei laughed. "Then about half a year later, we met again at a stray dog shelter. My roommate and I were volunteers there. Poplar Fruit was introduced to the shelter by someone and wanted to adopt a puppy. Gold, Kiki excitedly answered. Yes, then they named the puppy Gold. Now at home it's Kiki's good friend. Fong Beibei smiled sweetly. Then this puppy became your red string. Hu Jun suddenly realized. Indeed, because of Gold, I needed to visit Poplar Fruit's house. That's how we slowly got to know each other. Fong Beibei nodded and said without reservation. But it was half a year later when we really started dating. Fong Beibei didn't want to talk about who was chasing who and how many twists and turns there were. She smiled and said, after talking so much about the two of us, Brother Hu, you should also talk about your love story with Sister Lu Fong. Hey, what's there to talk about? We're both old men and old women. It wasn't Hu Jun who said this, but the little Kong Kong who was next to him. This child. Hu Jun chuckled and patted his head. Don't interrupt when adults are talking. But Kong Kong did change the topic. Hu Jun and Lu Fong's love story was much less attractive than Poplar Fruit's and Kiki's. They didn't like to talk too much to the outside world. After all, they were still in the entertainment industry. It was good for them to hide it a little. Fong Beibei observed Kong Kong's expression. She smiled and said to Kong Kong, then tell me, what kind of girl do you like? Fong Beibei didn't say that among the 4 boys in the program, she liked Kong Kong the most. It wasn't because Kong Kong was old and sensible, but because Kong Kong and Poplar Fruit were both Scorpios. The two of them had similar personalities. Poplar Fruit and Kong Kong were the kind of people who had their own pride. Relatively speaking, Kong Kong showed off his ability, while Poplar Fruit was a little more reserved and tactful. After all, he was more than 20 years older than Kong Kong. Poplar Fruit usually looked calm and collected. Once he encountered something he cared about, or stood in the field he controlled, Poplar Fruit's aura could crush the world. Also, Yanghua and Kong Kong were very similar to each other in terms of loyalty and loyalty. Poplar Fruit's relationship with his friends had always been very strong. For example, Song Jiwen, Fat Dragon, He Wenjua, and so on. For more distant ones, there were also big names like Che and Jiwen, Teacher He, Allen, Ardell, and Beckham. Their friendship with Poplar Fruit didn't involve interests, but even if they were far away from interests, they could still maintain a sincere friendship. This was really rare in the impetuous modern society. Kong Kong was the same. He was also a good boy who valued friendship. His friendship with Sister Pomegranate was obvious to the whole country. Many people didn't know that the assistant sister of the program group was also good friends with him. But after all, Kong Kong was still a little boy. When he was asked by Fong Beibei, and when Kiki, who was eating next to him, looked over curiously, his face turned red. Chapter 14:12. The leisurely afternoon was spent in laughter. Although Fong Beibei and Lu Fong did seriously ask Kong Kong and Kiki about the girl or boy they liked, the children's childlike answers made these serious topics very interesting. This was because of Kong Kong's surprising words, his unwillingness to play by the rules, Kiki's usual worship of her father. I like boys who are as powerful as Papa, and Fong Beibei's occasional words to bridge the generation gap. This made everyone start to understand this controversial stepmother from another angle. Not only did she have beauty and gentleness, but she also had the vigor of a young person. More importantly, she had wisdom that made people's eyes light up. In the afternoon, everyone gathered together and began to play a game. It was also the village chief's so-called family sports day. The sports day was also filled with laughter. Using their faces to break through the plastic film, the guests also went all out for the sake of victory. From another angle, their faces covered by the plastic film were completely different people. Of course, they were also a few hundred times uglier. Playing this game not only relied on strength, but also the courage to not be afraid of being ugly. Although Fong Beibei and Kiki did not win the game because they did not have enough strength, what surprised everyone was that the mother and daughter did not have the burden of being idols at all. Kiki did not need to be mentioned. The little princess loved to be beautiful, but did not know how to take care of her image. However, Fong Beibei was a girl in her early 20s. She did not care about her pure and beautiful face being squeezed into a ball by the plastic film. Seeing her pick up the wooden frame and put it over her head, Not to mention the audience in front of the TV. Even the few fathers present who were used to the show's torment secretly gave her a thumbs up. The second game was a traditional guessing game, but the rules were different. The father was required to use his but to write, and after the mother understood the word, she had to use her own words or body language to describe the word. In the end, the child had to say the word. This tested the tacit understanding between the families. The competition was very fun. The funniest of all, No-No-E, used his erratic answers to make everyone laugh. The other families also showed their mutual understanding. Even if Poplar Fruit wasn't there, Kong Kong pulled producer Xian and asked him to write with his but to help Fong Beibei and Kiki guess. Fong Beibei and Kiki had a surprising chemistry. It's the one that you like a lot when you're bathing. She changed into a different shape and often appeared in cartoons. Fong Beibei explained as she gestured. Before Fong Beibei could finish, Kiki cheered and waved her little hands. I know, it's Donald Duck. Hee hee. Similarly, the two questions weren't able to stump Fong Beibei and Kiki. The mother and daughter were too familiar with each other. Fong Beibei knew that she should use the words Kiki said in her daily life, or the things she came in contact with to describe it. Kiki was also able to quickly connect with Fong Beibei's thoughts and find the final answer. Winning was a joyous thing, but it felt like something was missing. Yes, other families were families of 3 or even 4, laughing and hugging each other in celebration. However, Fong Beibei and Kiki were the only family without a pillar of support. Looking at other people's excitement, they felt like they were missing out on a complete happiness. If only Uncle and Papa could come. Fong Beibei and Kiki thought at the same time. Then where was Poplar Fruit now? He was in the village, in the house less than 200 meters away from them. The screen in the room was flashing. It was a signal recorded by a camera. Poplar Fruit wasn't sitting in front of the screen. He stood by the window and looked at the open space not far away through the thick willow branches. The laughter of his daughter and wife lingered in his ears. The guests were all in the dark. Only a few people in the program group knew that Poplar Fruit had been secretly picked up by them. Yes, Poplar Fruit was their last big trick for this episode. However, after Poplar Fruit came, he became restless. He stood in front of the window and looked down. He couldn't help but say to the staff in charge of him, "Why don't you let me go down? I'm already here. What's the point of staying up here?" The staff smiled bitterly and said, "Teacher Yang, don't be impatient. It's not time for you to appear yet." "Then when should I appear?" Poplar Fruit rubbed his eyebrows helplessly and said, "Tomorrow." He arrived very early. According to the original script, Poplar Fruit would appear in front of the children the next day, so now even a cameraman was not sent to follow him. Yes, the director said that the effect of your appearance tomorrow is the best. The staff smiled and said. In other words, Poplar Fruit had to stay in this room from the afternoon to the next day. However, Poplar Fruit was restless. His mood was actually connected to Kiki and Fong Beibei. He knew that the two girls he loved most needed him at this time, and he also wanted to be with them. But how can they play the game without me? Don't they still need a father to write with his butt? Poplar Fruit said impatiently. Why don't they change the script? I can suddenly appear here and play the game with them. You really can't. The staff quickly hugged Poplar Fruit's body. He was shorter than Poplar Fruit by a head, so when he lowered his head and hugged Poplar Fruit, his whole body almost burrowed into Poplar Fruit's arm. He begged bitterly, "Teacher Yang, you have to take care of your body. If you really can do it, why won't the director let you appear? We are also thinking about your body." Actually, there was no other way. Poplar Fruit's body had not fully recovered, so it was impossible for him to be too tired. Even writing with his butt might cause his half-healed wound to rupture again. Even if Mango Station could really disregard the safety of the guest and force the guest to work like a cow or horse, they would not dare to go against the National Department. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs had clearly issued a letter some time ago. They could find Poplar Fruit to record the show. But if something happened to Poplar Fruit, and he could not participate in the military parade next month, the relevant leaders of Mango Station would definitely not be able to bear the consequences. Under such circumstances, how could they dare to let Poplar Fruit take the risk? Sigh okay. Poplar Fruit also understood this point. He did not want to make things difficult for a small staff member. With a sigh, Poplar Fruit sat down on the chair. Then I'll bear with it a little longer. Chapter 14-13. Ever since he was injured, Yanghua had used his internal strength to nourish the wound and accelerate its recovery. This also caused Yanghua to need more time to rest than before in order to recover his dantian, which was almost depleted every day. But even so, Poplar Fruit still woke up earlier than the average person. When the cameraman in charge of him woke up, Poplar Fruit had already quietly returned from outside. Of course, he didn't go out to train. Instead, he took advantage of the fact that Fong Beibei and Kiki were still sleeping soundly to sneak into their big house and peek at his wife and daughter through the window. Fong Beibei and Kiki were sleeping under the mosquito net. Kiki had already kicked off the small quilt, but Fong Beibei seemed to have pulled the small quilt back and covered it on Kiki's stomach. The weather was very hot, but the night was still quite cool. It was better to cover with the quilt and not catch a cold. Poplar Fruit only peeked twice before turning around to leave. He was in a good mood because he could soon bid farewell to the long wait and meet up with Fong Beibei and Kiki. Let's go. After returning, Poplar Fruit, who had already washed up, tidied himself up and smiled at his cameraman. First, they had a simple breakfast. He was the first to arrive at the dressing room. Here, the two makeup artists who were yawning had been waiting for a long time. Morning. It's been hard on you guys to wake up so early. Poplar Fruit entered the door and smiled as he waved his hand. Ah, Teacher Yang is here. The two makeup artists looked at Poplar Fruit in surprise. They were different from my daughter. They usually saw mini stars in the dressing room of Mango TV, so they didn't have a strong desire to chase after stars. Even when they saw those little fresh meat that often caused screams, they weren't very excited. But Poplar Fruit was different. Poplar Fruit's handsomeness wasn't earth-shattering. At most, it was the kind of handsomeness that was worth looking at. However, there was a mellow temperament about him that contrasted with his youth. Instead, it was like a book with a fresh cover and rich content. Looking at his shoulders, you would feel very at ease. Looking at his face, you would feel very warm. Then looking into his deep eyes, you would feel that you would slowly become intoxicated, just like drinking a glass of red wine with a strong after effect. Therefore, it was no wonder that these makeup artists who had seen countless people would become nervous when they saw Poplar Fruit. One of them even glanced at the mirror and scratched her hair that was sticking up because she hadn't taken care of it carefully. Ahem, don't just look at handsome guys. The assistant director, who had woken up early, instructed. Hurry up and put on Poplar Fruit's makeup. Otherwise, when they wake up later, they'll crash. Didn't they keep Poplar Fruit from appearing because they wanted to give the show a surprise? The makeup artist's expressions quickly became serious. The assistant director's words were like an imperial edict. Who would dare to disobey? They quickly pressed Poplar Fruit onto the chair and used all kinds of makeup on the table. Some of them were even made on the spot and drew on Poplar Fruit's face. Is this the old age makeup? Poplar Fruit asked curiously as he watched wrinkles gradually appear on his forehead under the makeup artist's Maoyang brush. Previously, the production team had already communicated with Poplar Fruit. He knew what he was going to do, so he wasn't surprised. However, this magical look still made Poplar Fruit a little confused. In the past, he had seen other celebrities wearing old age makeup on the internet. Some of them were directly photoshopped with computer algorithms. In front of the mirror, watching oneself grow old bit by bit was a wonderful feeling. Don't talk. After the makeup artist got into the mood, she couldn't care less about her love for Poplar Fruit. She scolded him and said, "Wait until the makeup is done." Talking caused the facial muscles to move, and it was easy to ruin the makeup that hadn't been fixed yet. Usually, they would dye Poplar Fruit's hair before putting on makeup. However, time was tight, and the two makeup artists didn't care too much. One of them was in charge of putting on makeup, while the other was in charge of dipping her hands in the white dye. Little by little, Poplar Fruit's black hair was dyed into a mix of green, white and gray. He looked dozens of years older in an instant. Finally, after nearly half an hour, Poplar Fruit's old age makeup was finally done. With white hair and a face full of wrinkles, Poplar Fruit looked like an old man in his 60s or 70s. Of course, the only thing that didn't change was his eyes, which were full of wisdom and energy. The two makeup artists who had finished their work took advantage of the final step and pulled Poplar Fruit to look around. Poplar Fruit felt that their eyes had inexplicably become a little hot, as if they weren't checking for flaws, but looking at him. In fact, that was the case. Poplar Fruit was led by the assistant director to an empty room with only 3 old-fashioned wooden armchairs. The two makeup artists couldn't help but get excited in the dressing room. Do you see? Do you see? This is Poplar Fruit. Why is he still so handsome when he's old? Yes, yes. Do you see his eyes? They're super hot. Why do I feel that he's even more charming when he's old? I'm so jealous. If only I could find such a handsome husband for the rest of my life. Ahem. The assistant director, who had just walked out, came back and glared at them angrily. This made the two makeup artists who were smitten with him calm down. Poplar Fruit, who was sitting alone in the room, felt that his surroundings were quiet, and the atmosphere was slowly becoming a little heavy. He smiled and said to the photographer, "They just woke up now, right? We might have to wait for a long time." "Yes, it should take more than an hour. Teacher Yang, if you're thirsty, there's mineral water over there," the photographer said honestly. "It's okay. I just can't wait to see them." Poplar Fruit laughed. "I want to see how she looks with her old makeup, and I also want to see Kiki's reaction when she sees us aging." Outside, the adults and children who had already eaten breakfast were separated by the village chief in the name of an activity. The children were led by the assistant sister, while the adults were divided into 2 groups, male and female, and entered the dressing room to have their makeup done. Needless to say, the female group's dressing room was also equipped with clothes. They all changed into Chinese-style cheongsams, and coupled with their carefully designed old makeup, it suddenly felt like Zhang Ailing was reincarnated. Life was a gorgeous robe, just like when a woman was old. She could still wear gorgeous clothes and be beautiful. However, unlike the other 4 mothers who were full of anticipation for the next phase, Fang Beibei was looking forward to Kiki's reaction when she saw her aging. But more than that, she felt regret. Really, in these 3 days, Fang Beibei had never missed Poplar Fruit as much as she did now. She missed the man she loved so much. They said that they would slowly grow old together. But why weren't they together this time? Fang Beibei's heart was sour and blocked, and she felt like crying. Chapter 14:14. With a trace of regret, Fang Beibei came to a house under the guidance of the photographer. She turned her head and asked with a smile, "Is it here?" The photographer nodded and said, "Yes, just open the door and go in." Fang Beibei gently put her hand on the iron ring of the door. The moment she used her strength, her heart suddenly pounded involuntarily. Before he had time to think, Fang Beibei had already opened the door. Creak, creak, creak. The old door groaned as the light from the outside slowly entered the house. As the door slowly opened, a figure sitting on an armchair gradually came into view. Oh, Fang Beibei didn't go in, but stood at the door in disbelief. She raised her hands and covered her mouth. Her beautiful eyes excitedly looked at the figure that slowly turned around. She was so excited that tears rolled in her eyes. Poplar Fruit turned around. Although he had waited for a long time and imagined countless scenes when they met, when he really saw Fang Beibei, whose hair was mostly white and whose face was imprinted with the traces of time, he couldn't help but be moved. "What's wrong? Can't you recognize me?" Poplar Fruit's nose was a little blocked, but his voice seemed to be more magnetic and seemed to have the thickness of time. He stood up, opened his arms and said mischievously, "Surprise." Fang Beibei couldn't control her emotions at this time. She smiled shyly while tears bloomed in the corner of her eyes. She gently stepped over the threshold and affectionately threw herself into Poplar Fruit's arms. Fortunately, the old age makeup was more stable after it was set. Even if it was removed, it still needed a special makeup remover. Otherwise, it would be exposed by Fang Beibei's tears. "Did you miss me?" Poplar Fruit hugged Fang Beibei and asked softly. "Yes." Fang Beibei's voice was also soft. Compared to before, She had found someone to rely on. She didn't have to be as strong as a tomboy. The sense of dependence in her voice was very strong. I didn't know you were here. I thought you weren't coming. The two sentences seemed to have the same meaning, but the latter sentence was filled with joy and happiness that seemed to jump from his heart to his voice. Haha. Poplar Fruit gently laughed. He pulled Fong Beibei up and carefully looked at her. He said, "If I don't come to such an important event, I will regret it for a long time." Fong Beibei felt Poplar Fruit's burning gaze. She shyly touched her face and asked, "Do I look ugly now?" Now, except for Fong Beibei's eyes, which were still filled with the aura of youth, her entire body seemed to have crossed a time and space tunnel and entered the age of 40 or 50. Of course not. No matter if you're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, or 10,000 years old, you will always be the most beautiful in my heart. Poplar Fruit said affectionately. This was not a show. From the love in Poplar Fruit's eyes, Fong Beibei felt like she was soaking in a honey pot. Me too. You are also the most handsome in my heart. Fong Beibei sweetly smiled. She leaned on Poplar Fruit's arms and looked up at Poplar Fruit. Although Poplar Fruit was still very different from before, and seemed to have become a little old man in his 60s, Fong Beibei still looked at Poplar Fruit with infatuation, just like when they were together under the moon. That deep and lingering love could be felt by the audience through the TV. Some were moved. Many couples or many viewers who were looking forward to a beautiful love seemed to be immersed in the sweet and warm atmosphere created by Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei. There were also those who were sad. This loving scene caused thousands of critical hits to countless single people. Many people fiercely scrolled through Weibo and complained, "My HP bar is empty. It's like a knife directly stabbed into my heart." Compared to the emotional feelings in the other rooms, Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei were indeed relatively less moving to tears. After all, they still lacked the real accumulation of time. Looking at the others, there was no need to talk about Hu Jun and Lu Fong, Lin Yongjian's family, and even Zhou Shimin and Ran Yingying. The two of them had been in love for 10 years. The days after their marriage were longer than the days that Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei had known each other. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei had not even experienced the 7-year itch. Of course, it could not be said that their relationship had never encountered a crisis. In the past, they had quarreled to the point of almost breaking up. But overall, the relationship between Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei was very strong. Even if there was a 7-year itch, it was probably just a small hurdle that they could easily cross. In comparison, Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei's relationship was indeed very inexperienced. But this inexperience did not give the audience a feeling that they were not reliable. On the contrary, the academic temperament between the two of them, born from being in the ivory tower, just happened to make up for this gap. Poplar Fruit was low-key and steady, while Fong Beibei was lively and gentle. They were like a pair of jade pendants that were perfectly compatible. Just by gently putting them together, they could make an intoxicating sound. At this moment, looking at the white-haired couple who were still cuddling under the morning light, holding hands and gazing at each other, even the pickiest audience was willing to give their blessings. That's it. Live well for the rest of your life. There was only one exception. Time and space changed, and a person hugged a pillow in front of the TV, feeling dejected. Zheng Yujie had always been watching Poplar Fruit's show. Just like how she scrolled through Poplar Fruit's Weibo every day, regardless of whether Poplar Fruit was showing off his daughter or showing off his love. Since the show Where Are We Going, Dad started airing, Zheng Yujie had been watching it regardless of rain or shine. Others were watching the cute children and Kiki, but Zheng Yujie's gaze was always moving with Poplar Fruit. But only today's episode made Zheng Yujie, who had always been stubborn, cry her eyes out. This was not because she was moved, but because she was sad, heartbroken. The saddest thing in the world was not Romeo and Juliet dying together for love, but when Liang Shanbo heard that his beloved Zhu Yingtai was engaged to someone else, he felt like he was struck by lightning. Of course, Zheng Yujie felt that she was even more miserable. She fell in love with a man who might not be able to say love to her in this lifetime. She knew that Poplar Fruit had feelings for her, but Poplar Fruit had already promised another woman who he loved even more deeply to hold hands with for life. Zheng Yujie was still holding on to her fantasy. But the fantasy on the screen of Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei was shattered. Zheng Yujie did not feel any hope. Yes, seeing them hugging each other and hearing their sweet words, Zheng Yujie felt that she really could not continue to be entangled with Poplar Fruit. This was a sadistic relationship that was destined to have no ending. But it seemed that she could no longer leave. Don't scold, Xiaohan. Zheng Yujie's scenes are not over yet. Really? Chapter 14-15. Sitting there and chatting, Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei actually discussed a little trick to deal with the upcoming Kiki. Under the guidance of the cameraman, Kiki staggered to the door. Before this, the little girl naively thought that she was playing the truth game with the village chief again. Pushing the door open, Kiki saw the back of a gray-haired figure just like Fang Beibei, but she saw two figures. Although it was just a figure, Kiki recognized it at once. It was too familiar. Papa? Mama? The first voice was a surprise, but the second voice was indeed because of the doubts in her heart gradually changed into anxiety. Is it Kiki? Poplar Fruit's old voice suddenly echoed in the house. It was hard for him to imitate so well. Perhaps even the best actor could do it. Yes, Kiki answered, but she felt that the man was very different from her father. How should she say it? It seemed that her father had become old. She hesitantly went in through the door, but stood by the door, not daring to go forward. Poplar Fruit gently turned around. She didn't know why he was so good at acting at this time. The trembling movement was like the movement of an old tree that had been withered for hundreds of years. There was no sound, but she could simulate the uncomfortable feeling of caw-caw in her ears. Come here, let Papa see Kiki. Yang Guo raised her head. Her white eyebrows, wrinkles that were knitted together like Chi-Chi's grandfather's, and her gray hair that alternated between black and white made Chi-Chi feel all kinds of discomfort. But this was indeed Papa. Kiki's inner call overcame the fear on the surface. She slowly moved in front of her father, with a blank expression on her little face. Finally, the little girl held her father's hand. It was still as warm as before, but why did Papa become like this in just a few days? Fang Beibei also raised her head. She didn't say anything because her voice couldn't be very old. If she spoke, she would be exposed, so Fang Beibei looked at Kiki with a deep and old gaze, as if she was looking at her carefully, as if she hadn't seen her for a long time. Papa, Mama, what happened to you? In the end, Kiki was still naive and cute. The first reaction in her little head was not whether or not her father and them were working together to put on an act. Papa came to see you and Mama, and then accidentally walked into a room with your Mama. Poplar Fruit pretended to be very strenuous and said, this room, a very magical. 1 minute outside is equivalent to a year inside. Your Mama and I were trapped here for more than 30 years, and then we became so old. Kiki believed that it was true. She grabbed her father's hand and couldn't help but use more strength. Papa and Mama haven't seen Kiki for decades. I miss you so much. Poplar Fruit used his other big hand to gently cover his daughter's hands and patted them gently. He blinked his eyes and made a sad expression, but he couldn't shed a tear. It seemed that his acting skills were still a little lacking compared to the movie Emperor. Kiki's little heart was touched by her father's sad words. She pitifully hugged her father's hand and asked in a trembling voice, Papa, will you die? Maybe Papa is old. Poplar Fruit seemed to have learned from Lu Yi that he wouldn't stop until he made his daughter cry. His words became the fuse that ignited Kiki's emotional outburst. Ooh, I don't want Papa to die. I don't want to. Kiki's thoughts were already in a mess. Just like when Poplar Fruit saved her in the factory, her control was far weaker than her father's. She hugged her father's arm and cried with snot and tears. Seeing the little girl's sad appearance, the audience felt so distressed that they couldn't help but scold Poplar Fruit. Can't you speak properly? Poplar Fruit secretly laughed and said, Don't be so sad, your Papa is still fine. In the future, when he's old, he might get sick and die, but you don't have to cry because life, old age, sickness, and death, this is our life. Fang Beibei secretly patted Poplar Fruit's arm and looked at Poplar Fruit reproachfully, as if to say, That's enough, don't cause trouble. Kiki violently shook her head. She felt so uncomfortable that her nose was blocked. She sobbed and said, I don't want Papa to die. Papa is dead. What am I going to do? Hearing this, everyone's heart ached. Kiki, who had relied on her father since she was young, couldn't imagine not having her father by her side. In fact, she had experienced the time when she was kidnapped and Poplar Fruit was seriously injured, but at least Poplar Fruit was still there, so there was still hope. Fong Beibei's tear ducts were shallow, so when she heard the little girl's voice that sounded as if the sky had collapsed, she couldn't help but tear up. No, Papa isn't dead yet. Can't Papa be with you for a few more decades? Poplar Fruit quickly picked up his daughter, held her in his arms, and gently comforted her. When you grow up, fall in love, find someone who can protect you like Papa, and then get married. I don't want to woo-woo. Kiki, in her father's arms, shook her little head and cried. I don't want to grow up, I don't want to fall in love, I don't want to get married. I want Papa woo-woo-woo-woo. You. Fong Beibei rebuked Poplar Fruit with a glare. She moved to the position in front of Poplar Fruit, moved the armchair forward, and sat very close to Kiki and Poplar Fruit. She gently pulled Kiki's little hand. Kiki, Papa and Mama will grow old, and one day, we will all become like this. Fong Beibei's other hand wiped away the tears on Kiki's face, who was in Poplar Fruit's arms, and softly said, Then you will become a big girl. Don't say that you don't want to. Fong Beibei said with a smile. Papa and I are very happy to see you grow up day by day. Just like how you used to be so small, but now you have grown so beautiful. Kiki's crying gradually stopped under Fong Beibei's gentle voice. The little girl's eyes were red, and her long eyelashes were still hanging tears. You don't want to see Papa and Mama grow old, and Papa and Mama also don't want to grow old so quickly, but we will cherish every minute and every second that we have together, right? Fong Beibei said with a smile. As long as we are together, our lives will be complete and happy. But Papa is getting old, and Mama is also getting old. I understand the reason. Kiki sniffed, and her voice was heard softly. I haven't grown up yet, and I can't take care of you. At this moment, Kiki's thinking was very different from before, but her sincere words were better than any words of love. No matter how stone-hearted the audience was, they would melt into a bowl of warm tea, moved Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei's eyes, and also filled the entire lens and the entire TV screen. Chapter 14-16. Woo-woo, Kiki is so good. You're so sensible. I'm so touched. I'm going to cry for a while. Fong Beibei saw that the atmosphere was still depressed because of Poplar Fruit's previous nonsense. She smiled and mischievously rubbed her eyes with her hands. Ah, the kind Kiki did not suspect anything. She came out from her father's arms, opened her slender arms, hugged Fong Beibei, and tried to comfort her. Ma, don't cry, don't be afraid. She was still immersed in Poplar Fruit's lies. Fong Beibei smiled helplessly. She held Kiki's little face, smacked a kiss on her forehead, and said with a smile, how can you be so cute? Poplar Fruit snickered. He was very touched, but he dared not to admit it. He had to leave a mess for Fong Beibei to clean up for him. Fong Beibei rubbed little Muddle's hair and said, Okay, you still haven't realized that your father is teasing you? Kiki turned her head blankly and looked at her father. Her father had not had time to restrain the smile on his face. We're participating in a segment. You see, your father and I are old. In fact, it's all makeup. Touch your mother's hair, it's fake hair. Fong Beibei smiled and pulled Kiki's soft little hand, letting her grab her hair that was obviously shorter. It's real. Kiki cried out in surprise. She touched Fong Beibei's face and immediately felt that it was different from the skin on her hand. Where's Papa's? Kiki turned around and asked her father to lower his head. Then, she curiously touched her own hair, and even grabbed 2 handfuls. Ew. Poplar Fruit laughed. This is real, it's just dyed. Papa is bad, you lied to me. The little girl finally came back to her senses. She pouted her little mouth, stomped her feet, and said a little angrily, Haha, Daddy was wrong, Daddy was wrong. Poplar Fruit also did the same as Fong Beibei. He held his daughter's face, kissed it, and said, Daddy shouldn't have lied and made Kiki sad. Hee, I forgive you. The little girl was not angry. She was pretending just now, and now she laughed. She laughed happily and felt a little lucky, because her father and mother did not really grow old. The little girl put her little arms around her father's neck, and let her father carry her to sit on his lap. Then, she said to her father very intimately, "Papa, why have you all become old but I haven't?" Fortunately, the injury on Yonggua's thigh was on her back. Chi-Chi was also quite heavy, and pressing on the wound was very painful. "Because we want to give you a surprise." Poplar Fruit exaggeratedly opened his arms and said, "Surprise." However, Feng Beibei laughed and decisively exposed him. "There's only surprise, no joy. Kiki, your father is bad." Someone seemed to have forgotten that she also agreed with Poplar Fruit's proposal. "That's right, Papa, you can't lie to a child." The little girl joined her mother in criticizing her father. Poplar Fruit chuckled and changed the topic. "Look at Daddy and Mommy, we've grown old, who's prettier?" "I think Mama is prettier." Kiki twisted her little neck, looked left and right and giggled. "You're not deliberately saying that because Daddy lied to you, right?" Poplar Fruit asked unconvinced. "No, I'm prettier." "Kiki, come here, give Mommy a kiss." Feng Beibei laughed happily and hugged Kiki, who jumped down from Poplar Fruit's lap, and kissed her again. The two girls looked at Poplar Fruit and smiled. Looking at the two pairs of smiling eyes, Poplar Fruit could only think of one word: beautiful eyes. Kiki felt that it was not good enough at this time. She ran up, gently pulled her father's hand, shook it, and said softly, "Papa, don't be unhappy. Mama is beautiful, but Papa is not beautiful, but Papa is very handsome. You're really my daughter." Poplar Fruit laughed, rubbed Kiki's little head, and kissed his daughter through his bangs. He was also very happy. Different from other families, Poplar Fruit's family was still a young family. After crying, people looked at them and smiled, which made their hearts warm and sweet. But the recording was not over yet. After simply removing the makeup on their faces, they finally looked normal. Poplar Fruit and Feng Beibei held hands, and went to the hall of the big house where Feng Beibei lived to meet Kiki. Although the makeup was removed, the two still looked like an old couple, but they held hands like a young couple, which made people feel very warm. The other families also came here after saying goodbye to the emotional scene. Those who arrived early had already found chairs to sit down. When they saw Poplar Fruit, they stood up in surprise. "Yo, Poplar Fruit, you're still here. Haha. Are you better?" "There's no big problem." Poplar Fruit hugged them one by one and greeted them happily. After recording so many episodes, the five fathers had already formed a deep friendship. This scene was very precious, because this was the first time the five pairs of fathers and mothers gathered together. But in the end, there was a small segment in this episode's recording, and that was the children bringing water to wash their parents' feet. From TV, this segment, which had been used so many times, could no longer move the audience as much as the original TV commercial, and some extreme viewers even felt that it was fake. But sitting in the armchair, from Poplar Fruit's perspective, it was a completely different feeling. Looking at his daughter holding her small face, swaying as she carried a basin of water, crossing thousands of mountains' thresholds, leaping over thousands of rivers, small ditches, to reach him, then squatting down, using her small fingers to rub his big feet, that kind of happiness accompanied by joy leaped onto his face. "Look at him." Feng Beibei covered her mouth and laughed happily. In fact, who wasn't like this? After Kiki helped her father wash his feet, she washed her mother's feet. Feng Beibei also laughed happily, and even hugged Kiki and kissed her without caring that she was wet. Later, an interview with the fathers was added in the show. During the interview with Poplar Fruit, he put his hands together and said with a smile, "Thank you very much for the careful arrangement of the production team. My body can't support a long recording, but I didn't expect the production team to be so generous and help me change the time." And then this segment was really touching. "With my wife, Beibei, and my daughter, Kiki, I spent an unforgettable time growing old." Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "Really, I'm very grateful. If I missed this segment, I think I'd be very regretful." From this segment, I think we've learned a lot. Poplar Fruit said in the end, "But the most important thing is to cherish Cherish the happy time we have now, and cherish the people we love. We can't wait until they're old or gone, and then it's really too late to love them. Chapter 14-17. Poplar fruit's popularity was unexpected. It was even more popular than poplar fruit's popularity in China. This had a lot to do with the way the foreign media reported it. The domestic reports mainly focused on poplar fruit's official status, such as the future professor, the youngest department head, double doctorates, and so on. Although these were very impressive, many young people were not interested in them. The foreign reports took a different approach. They dug up and focused on many of poplar fruit's heroic deeds. For example, like a lone hero, he resisted the violent terrorists at the train station with his own strength, and even defeated them. For example, Yang Gui killed the bank robber with her bare hands. That jumping skill and fighting scene was like a movie. It made people click their tongues. Another example was the kidnapping of Kiki, whose fever had subsided because of poplar fruit and Mango TV's low-key handling. Under the investigation of the foreign media, the details gradually came to light. First of all, it was confirmed that Kiki's kidnapping was a revenge incident. The people who kidnapped Chi-Chi were the fugitive criminals from the group of drug dealers who robbed the bank. Secondly, although they were not sure that poplar fruit's rescue was an international rescue operation, as the specific location of the rescue operation had been kept secret by Yan Wanxiong to only a few people. However, from the foreign media's investigation of the smoking gang, they gave a guess that was very close to the truth. This guess would not cause an international dispute, but at least it covered poplar fruit's rescue operation with a mysterious and exciting color. There were many other examples, such as poplar fruit going into the heart of the kidnappers like a lone hero, poplar fruit's madness, and after rescuing Kiki, poplar fruit was seriously injured, and the bullet was only a short distance away from his heart. These pieces of information, which were not difficult to find, were all dug up by the foreign media. It was as if they were mining. Every time they found a new piece of news, they would be as excited as if they had found gold or diamonds. Countless editors stayed up all night to connect these clues into bizarre stories. China's report downplayed the role of poplar fruit, while foreign media's report weakened the existence of the police in solving the case. Instead, it highlighted poplar fruit's fatherly love without regard for his own safety. Foreigners liked this kind of personal heroism, and they also liked this kind of tragic love. After this news became popular, hundreds of millions of netizens discussed it on social media. Isn't this a real-life hurricane rescue? Many people exclaimed. 7 years ago, Manason's hurricane rescue was a huge success. In order to rescue his abducted daughter, a retired Secret Service agent charged into the mafia's territory. Manason's care and love for his daughter, as well as his unscrupulous and fearless image of himself, was deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. In comparison, wasn't poplar fruit's act of rescuing his abducted daughter as revered as Manason's? Everyone knew that poplar fruit's skills were extraordinary. Netizens who had watched the videos of poplar fruit dealing with the thugs at the train station and bank robbers knew that this young father with a doctorate was an expert in Chinese kung fu. There were even people who took photos of poplar fruit's bare upper body from Fashion Week back then. They pointed at poplar fruit's strong muscles and exclaimed in admiration, "China's Rambo." However, poplar fruit wasn't as lucky as the main character in the movie, nor did he have Rambo's steel body. Poplar fruit was just an ordinary person. He was also seriously injured, and was almost on the verge of death when he was rescued. However, this made people feel the cruelty of reality and how difficult it was for poplar fruit. Fortunately, he managed to pull through. Seeing poplar fruit's upright posture during the military parade, everyone was glad that there were still good people in this world who could live a peaceful life. Even though he was seriously injured, poplar fruit was still able to recover in more than a month. Of course, there were also many netizens who, because of their admiration for poplar fruit, went to watch one of the few shows where poplar fruit appeared for a long time. Where Are We Going, Dad? This show unexpectedly became a small hit overseas. However, foreign netizens still paid attention to poplar fruit and his daughter. From the show, they truly understood poplar fruit's love for Kiki. It was like a spring breeze, sprinkling in every viewer's heart bit by bit. Foreigners also understood love. From TV series such as Modern Family, it could be seen that they preferred this kind of fatherly love, this kind of family relationship. Although some people might think that it was normal and ordinary, when this kind of fatherly love was connected to Poplar Fruit's sacrifice to rescue his daughter, it was enough to make all the viewers sigh. Among ordinary people, Poplar Fruit's influence had reached an amazing height. There were even many foreign netizens who had already regarded Poplar Fruit as their idol. Because of this, there were even some small Hollywood film companies that ran to China, wanting to invite Poplar Fruit to make a movie. When they heard the news, more domestic film companies also flocked in. Of course, Poplar Fruit's popularity played a key role, but the film company actually had a mature consideration. Poplar Fruit's image and temperament were good, and he was also a martial arts master like the two brothers Long. By using his popularity, it was inevitable that they would be able to take root in Hollywood. Moreover, didn't Poplar Fruit participate in a variety show? In everyone's view, even if Poplar Fruit had a university teaching and administrative status, he was still a figure in the entertainment industry. Many Chinese celebrities dreamed of going to Hollywood, but did not have the chance. How could Poplar Fruit refuse? However, Poplar Fruit refused. At first, he declined, but later on, Poplar Fruit really did not have the time to deal with the wave of invitations, so he simply hung up the no war sign. Not only did he face the reporters, but he also pinned his unintentional, electric shock attitude on Weibo. Finally, the small film companies that wanted to fish in troubled waters were no longer rejected by Poplar Fruit, but the big film companies came running. Even if Poplar Fruit was closed, they could still find Poplar Fruit in school. "I don't make movies," Poplar Fruit said helplessly. "We're not looking for you to make movies." The person from 20th Century Fox was very happy because Poplar Fruit spoke English so well that it was as if he was talking to his own countrymen. There was no language barrier when they communicated. "Then what do you want?" Poplar Fruit asked, puzzled. "We want to buy the adaptation rights of your story." It turned out that Fox, who once released Hurricane Rescue, had taken a fancy to Poplar Fruit's real-life story and wanted to buy it, adapt it into a movie script, and then film it. "We guarantee that tens of millions of people in the world, hundreds of millions of people want to see such a movie. Fatherly love and guns. This is the eternal source material of Hollywood movies," the person said while dancing. "Sorry, excuse me." Poplar Fruit smiled and patted the person's shoulder, but he had no interest in chatting with the person. "Although to you, this is a good source material and a gimmick, to my family, this is a memory that they don't want to mention." Yangwa didn't even turn back as she left. Chapter 14:18. Amidst the hustle and bustle, Poplar Fruit calmly ushered in his first semester as the dean of the department. Originally, a young boy was riding on top of everyone's heads. Not to mention the Eurasian teachers, the other teachers in the college who had struggled for decades, and were still in teaching positions, or were only in the position of deputy dean, were faintly unconvinced of Poplar Fruit. However, after returning from the military parade, Poplar Fruit had supreme prestige. Even the principal was willing to give him generous treatment. The students below were even more in awe of him. At this time, no one dared to jump out and criticize the college's arrangement for being unfair. After all, Poplar Fruit was a person who had been praised by the number one leader. Who dared to question the number one leader's vision? Of course, putting aside the issue of age, to evaluate Poplar Fruit's ability as an equal, regardless of whether it was a teacher or a student, they all had to bow down to him. In the last teaching seminar before school started, Poplar Fruit faced teachers of 7 different languages at the same time. Whether it was answering questions or asking questions, his ease and knowledge shocked everyone. However, compared to Poplar Fruit's verbal battle with the group of scholars at Xindao Translation, this was only a small scene. The beginning of the new semester was a busy start for Poplar Fruit and the Eurasian teachers. This was because they had to organize an entrance exam, organize the students to fill in their applications, and finally decide on their second foreign language. Of course, second-year students could also join in. After second year, the burden of common subjects was reduced. Some outstanding students who had extra energy could study a third foreign language. This was a big innovation of Higashiyama University. Students who studied a third foreign language would have strong competitiveness in the future. Whether it was in postgraduate studies, going abroad, or seeking a high-income job in the future, it would be a very conspicuous bonus point. According to Poplar Fruit's recent understanding of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, if a student of Higashiyama University mastered 3 foreign languages, the possibility of entering the Ministry of Foreign Affairs after graduation was very high. However, learning 3 foreign languages at the same time was a big challenge. One had to know that learning 2 foreign languages could make half of the students feel uncomfortable, and only a quarter of the students could persevere. Learning 3 foreign languages at the same time was not only a matter of time, but it also required the student to have a high level of linguistic talent and interest in learning foreign languages. Even in Higashiyama University, which had most of the outstanding students in the Guangdong and Hunan provinces, Poplar Fruit estimated that there would not be more than 10 students with such ability and aptitude in each batch. As for the Sanskrit and African languages taught by Poplar Fruit himself, it was estimated that there would be even fewer people choosing them. It was unlikely that there would be a single person chosen in a year. Of course, this was also a matter of foundation. Higashiyama University's traditional strengths were in medicine, economics, and other sciences, literature, history, politics, and social sciences. Language studies could not even be compared to the Guangdong Foreign Studies University in the city. Therefore, Poplar Fruit had to start from the basics with the academy. After a few years, their students would be able to enter the market and earn a reputation in the market. Naturally, more outstanding students would be willing to enroll. Of course, Higashiyama University had already created a huge signboard like Poplar Fruit. According to an organization's investigation, the number of applicants for Higashiyama University increased by 2.6% this year. This was equivalent to having tens of thousands of outstanding students. Many of them had changed their view of Higashiyama University because Poplar Fruit was teaching at Higashiyama University. This was just like how after Lecture Room became popular, the number of applicants for Xiamen University skyrocketed. This comparison was not accurate enough. A more similar example was like how the campus bell of a martial arts university became popular on the internet. Many new students applied for martial arts universities just to see the beauty of the cherry blossom goddess. Although this could only affect a small number of people, and the only thing that could make the school competitive in recruiting students was the improvement of their own abilities. However, from this short period of glory, it could be seen how powerful the appeal of a person with considerable influence in society was. However, what really made Chen Zongdai happy was that this year's postgraduate exams in the Foreign Studies Department had also become popular. These newly recruited postgraduate students obviously had higher scores than previous years. They were not like the undergraduates who followed the crowd blindly. The reason why they chose Higashiyama University and the Foreign Studies Department was because of Poplar Fruit's success. It was because the Foreign Studies Department had nurtured a local born and bred talent like Poplar Fruit. Entering Higashiyama University's Foreign Studies Department was, of course, also a desire to replicate Poplar Fruit's success. However, Poplar Fruit's success would not be replicated so easily. This guy's talent was not something a normal human could compare to. Chen Zongdai had no intention of deceiving the students. However, as the dean and instructor, he did not want to disappoint the students' expectations. Therefore, this year's postgraduate teachers had a heavy responsibility. Chen Zongdai began to consider whether he should increase Poplar Fruit's burden. There was absolutely no problem with Poplar Fruit's ability. It would not be a problem to let him be a doctoral supervisor at all. It could be said that Poplar Fruit could be used as a revolutionary brick to move wherever there was a need. However, Chen Zongdai could not do this for the time being. Even the title of a postgraduate supervisor could not be thrown on Poplar Fruit's head. That was because of the lack of qualifications. Next month, the title of Associate Professor of Poplar Fruit would be officially announced. Chen Zongdai was still looking forward to throwing out the atomic bomb-level thesis of Poplar Fruit after the title was announced. He wanted to help Poplar Fruit get the title of professor next year. Before this, Poplar Fruit could only obediently guide the undergraduates or occasionally help the postgraduate supervisors. He could not rush it. However, this year, the School of Foreign Languages was ambitious. Not only did they invest a lot of effort in the academic construction of the school, but they also had to boldly expand the school's traditional resources. In the first semester, Poplar Fruit prioritized stability and laid a good foundation for the Eurasian language department. However, in the new semester next year, Poplar Fruit would go abroad more often with Chen Zongdai and the school's people. On one hand, they would participate in international industry conferences and forums to increase the school's voice in related areas. On the other hand, they would also look for resources to cooperate with excellent foreign universities. For example, the school had cooperation with some foreign universities for small languages such as Spanish, French, Korean, Taiwanese, etc. Poplar Fruit would also strive to use his influence and academic ability to help the school build bridges with more excellent schools. Especially for his Eurasian language department, the students still needed to increase communication with native speakers to avoid learning a mute language. Therefore, the junior students and the foreign exchange students practiced speaking and correct pronunciation. The senior students went abroad to improve themselves in a real language environment and personally experience the local conditions and customs of the foreign countries. This way, they would be able to apply what they had learned. When they graduated, they could directly become the core talents of the company or related departments. Poplar Fruit still had a lot to do. Chapter 14-19. Although Poplar Fruit was extremely busy at school, he still managed to squeeze out 3 days to accompany his daughter on her 6th trip to a father's place. The trip this time was at Nanhu, which was also very close to Guangdong province. However, to Lu Yi, it was a trip that touched his soul. 17 years ago, Lu Ye's first movie, which was also the movie that made him famous after being nominated for the Golden Rooster Award for Best Supporting Actor, was filmed in Yuan's ancient Miao village. The production team had chosen this place with great care. Even Lu Yi did not know about it beforehand. He had even forgotten that this place was the old haunt where his dream began 17 years ago. Revisiting the old haunt, there were a lot of sighs, many emotional and touching scenes. Especially when Lu Yi brought his son to live in the house where he used to film under the arrangement of the production team. Lu Yi lay down on the bed while the camera traveled back in time to the past. The feeling of time and space intertwining and no longer existing was touching from the bottom of one's heart. Back then, Lu Yi was still a young man. He was also acting as someone else's son. Now the mountain was still there, and that person was already a father. So was the main character of this trip Lu Yi? Of course not. The memory was just a small Easter egg. In Yuan's ancient Miao village, the production team continued to torture the fathers with all kinds of games and competitions. Of course, Poplar Fruit felt that the most meaningful part of this episode was the role-playing mission on the second day. This role-playing was not referring to the third day where they had to dress up as anime characters and act mysterious. Instead, the children and the fathers had to split up and go deep into different jobs to experience the hardships of working at the bottom of society. Poplar Fruit and Xian had to go to the barber shop to learn how to cut hair by hand from the master. Meanwhile, Kiki followed Dejun, Lin Yongjian, and Zhou Shimin to the brickyard to move bricks. It was unknown if the master of the barber shop did it on purpose. The tools they used were scissors and scrapers. They did not even have a pusher. Of course, it wasn't very retro. When Poplar Fruit was young in the countryside, he also had such an old master cut his hair. A highly skilled master could cut clean and refreshing hair with a pair of scissors, and it was indeed easier to use a hair clipper than a pair of scissors. Therefore, in the current era where hair salons were everywhere, hair clippers had become the first choice of hair clippers for hairdressing. However, if you went to those high-end hair salons or observed the work of very top hairdressers, it was easy to find that they still used scissors. A pair of delicate scissors was like an extension of their hands and thoughts. The customer's hair also changed into the shape in their mind under the swing of the scissors. Compared to that, the pusher was only a tool used by a small number of people when they needed to push a green head. The master taught Poplar Fruit step by step how to use scissors and comb to cut his hair. Little chubby Xian, on the other hand, experienced the old-fashioned perming method under the service of another master. Originally, Poplar Fruit should also try to curl his hair. In the end, because Poplar Fruit's hair was too short, he was used to having a buzz cut, he escaped the disaster. Using scissors to cut hair was not as easy to learn as Poplar Fruit thought. Even though Yonggwa was already very talented, and his control over his muscles had already reached the level of minute detail, Yonggwa could only awkwardly look at the sacrificing customer in front of him with a pair of scissors in his hand. He had no idea where to start. This was two different things from using a miaodao. A miaodao had its delicate parts, but compared to a small pair of scissors, it was still wide open. The customer's requirements were not high. Just make do with it. Cut it a little shorter. But how should he cut it a little shorter? He couldn't just pick up a strand of hair and cut half of it, right? In the past, when he cut Kiki's hair when she was young, Poplar Fruit directly covered it with a kettle lid, and then cut off the bottom edge. But obviously, adult hair could not be done that way. And after the store manager taught so much, Poplar Fruit felt that it was still very difficult to connect the dots. What should he do? So hot, so hot. Xian muttered in a muffled voice. Poplar Fruit turned his head and smiled. Xian's hair had been rolled up by the hairdresser with a small roll of paper, and the granny-like master took out a steam towel from a big pot, and directly covered Xian's small head. The steaming towel emitted a fragrance similar to that of roasted sweet potatoes. Xian was a little restless. He huffed and twisted, and even shouted, I'm roasted." Poplar Fruit looked and couldn't help but laugh. In the end, he was gently tapped on the shoulder by his grandpa master behind him. "Don't look around, do your thing. Don't be afraid, it's not hot." The granny-like master coaxed. Xian, who was slowly getting used to it, did indeed calm down. His small nose was still twitching, as if he wanted to eat after smelling the fragrance. "All right, let's ignore this little foodie for now." Poplar Fruit calmed down, and paid attention to the customer in front of him. "Little master, are you reliable?" This middle-aged customer was more interested in variety, and happily chatted with Poplar Fruit. "Big brother, don't worry. Today, you'll see how beautifully I tidy you up." Poplar Fruit laughed. He used the Guanxia style of Mandarin that he just learned and said, "My family has a godly haircutting technique that has been passed down for thousands of years. Today, I took it out because I saw that you looked kind. I don't serve ordinary people." Hearing Poplar Fruit's words, everyone laughed. This guy really dared to say that. This was the first time he used a pair of scissors to cut someone's head, right? Even when he was young, he didn't harm the girl in front of him like this. Xiao Han foolishly did this kind of bad thing when he was young. Of course, this was also to add some humor to the program. But when it came to cutting, Poplar Fruit didn't cut people as easily as he did with the miaodao. Poplar Fruit was seen holding a comb in one hand and scissors in the other. He was trembling as he combed twice, not daring to cut. "Little master, you can do it. I don't blame you." The middle-aged man wanted to comfort Poplar Fruit, but his words sounded funny. Yonggwa gathered her courage, calmed herself down, and began to snip. 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 Needless to say, Yonggwa's cut was quite stylish. After that cut, he gradually regained his confidence, causing the sound of his scissors to become a string. After cutting, the hair fell down one after another, as if it was drizzling. However, the customer gradually felt that there was a problem. He took advantage of a gap to touch the back of his head and asked doubtfully, "Little master, did you cut my hair unevenly?" "Ahem, it's okay, you can continue." "Old Ping, I'll fix it for you later, and it'll be fine," Grandpa's master said calmly as he smoked. Well, Poplar Fruit's confidence in cutting didn't mean that he had broken through some technical bottleneck. He was still far from becoming a hairdresser. Chapter 1420. Mossy stone steps, smoky alleys, Miao Village in the South Lake, and more of the beauty of the small towns in the south. At the corner of the street, 2 feet, one big and one small, appeared in front of the audience. Pft. The audience, who were drinking water, could not help but spit it out. They laughed so hard that their stomachs were cramping. On the screen, the big and small duo appeared. Slippers and shorts, that was nothing. Looking at their upper bodies, they were wearing a colorful short jacket, which gave off a strong local flavor. Poplar Fruit and Xian Xian were wearing special sunglasses. Poplar Fruit was wearing the classic round old man's sunglasses. Their hairstyles were also super cool. Xian Xian's new compact curly hair, Poplar Fruit's side-flattened watermelon skin, coupled with their weird outfits, it was as shocking as it could be. Poplar Fruit laughed and leaned back to back with Xian Xian, making a classic pose of holding a gun with one hand in James Bond. This time the audience, who did not laugh, also laughed. Well, after cooperating with the program team, Poplar Fruit quickly took Xian Xian to get rid of the colorful short jacket. The two of them finished their tasks early and had an early lunch. Of course, Poplar Fruit was not willing to stay and rest. He missed Kiki, who was working in the brickyard, and Xian Xian missed her father. So the two of them hit it off and decided to go to the brickyard together. Finally, they arrived at the brickyard. Poplar Fruit held Xian Xian's hand and went in. Then, under the dim light, they found their daughter in the crowd. Kiki. Poplar Fruit's steady voice trembled. It was mainly because of his heartache. She was a beautiful little girl, but now she was wearing a mask, and her face was covered in dirt. How could he not feel heartache? Dad. Xian Xian did not care. She cheered and rushed to Zhou Shimin, who was still holding a brick in his hand. Wait. My clothes are dirty. Zhou Shimin shouted, but Xian Xian had already jumped on him. Papa. Kiki raised her head in surprise. Her eyes were as clear and beautiful as ever. Her voice was muffled because she was wearing a mask. The little girl was very excited to meet her father. When her father squatted down, she gave him a big hug. Of course, Poplar Fruit didn't care that his daughter had stained his clothes with brick dust. We moved a lot. From here to there. It's not comfortable wearing a mask. The little girl was excited when she saw her father. She couldn't stop talking. Poplar Fruit couldn't stop laughing. He looked around and roughly understood the sweat his daughter and the other guests had put in. Zhou Shimin and Lin Yongjian rolled up their sleeves and worked hard to move the bricks. Kiki and Dejun helped them. They lifted the bricks from the ground and handed them to them. Dejun was so afraid of getting dirty, but he put in a lot of effort today and didn't mind at all. The electric tractor in front of them was already half loaded. According to Kiki, they had already sent out an entire vehicle. Of course, it was impossible to ask the children to do such a hard work all the time. They were too young, and they were exhausted after moving for a while. Originally, Kiki and Dejun were brought out to play by the daughter of the owner of the small brick factory. The factory was too small, and he was both the owner and the worker. However, after hearing about the little sister's story, the two children were very sensible and came back with the electric tractor. They helped finish the rest of the work. Come on, I'll help too. Poplar Fruit rolled up his sleeves and joined the ranks of moving bricks. Poplar Fruit also brought Xian Xian. In this way, there were 3 pairs of father and son. Xian Xian helped his father, and Kiki worked hard to help Poplar Fruit. The little girl was not weak like a girl at all. She worked hard to hand the bricks to her father. The audience applauded for these children. Good job. Finally, with everyone's efforts, the last truck of bricks was sent out by Poplar Fruit. Kiki's task was considered completed. Of course, everyone was not in a hurry to leave. They had a very simple lunch at the little sister's house. This simple was relative to the living standards of the guests. For the owner's daughter, the little sister's family who had been admitted to a university, they had already taken out the best ingredients at home to entertain the guests. And the little sister's cooking. You don't have to cook anymore. Poplar Fruit stopped the girl who wanted to cook another pot of rice and stir-fry dishes because of Poplar Fruit and Xian Xian's arrival. He smiled and said, Xian Xian and I have already eaten. Let's sit and chat. Poplar Fruit served Kiki and quickly finished the meal. After the little girl worked hard, her appetite increased and she ate quickly. After eating, she told her father about the little sister's situation. It turned out that although the little sister's father was the owner of a small brick factory, in fact, he earned very little money. After working for half a day, a truck of bricks only earned a few yuan. But the little sister was very optimistic. She smiled and told the children about her deeds. She told the children that because she was admitted to a university, she needed to spend more money. So during the summer vacation, she helped her father earn money in the brick factory, but her father's burden became heavier. The father would grit his teeth and send his daughter to university, no matter how hard it was. Perhaps this was the only way for them to change their lives. Poplar Fruit listened to his daughter's story and looked at the girl with big eyes who loved to smile across the table. Hearing other people pity her, the girl smiled embarrassedly, but her eyes were red. She should be 18 years old this year, right? But the children of the poor began to take charge of the family early. She did not go on a graduation trip, nor did she follow her friends to play. Instead, she began to think about her future and shoulder a heavy burden for her family. Even though the environment was bad, even though she was in a difficult situation, even though she could not afford to buy cosmetics or nice clothes, her eyes were filled with hope. Her face was blooming with love, and her smile was optimistic and warm. She's the one who's the best. Poplar Fruit had seen many children who were poorer than her, but this was the first time he had seen such an optimistic and cheerful girl from a poor family. Even the super sensible Xiong Xiaolin from the Xiong family village did not have such a smile filled with positive energy like this girl in front of him. Of course, she was not a very beautiful girl. She could not even be considered pretty, but her smile was definitely a radiant one that the audience would never forget. At this moment, the emotional De Jun had tears in his eyes. He held Lin Yongjian's hand and asked Lin Yongjian to leave the money to the little sister. Kiki obviously thought so too. She said so much because she wanted her father to help the little sister who had touched her. Every child was a kind angel. The audience in front of the TV felt especially deeply at this moment. Hearing the two children's choked voices, the little sister was also moved to tears. But she was crying while smiling. She was not smiling because she was proud, but because she was gratified and moved. She also did not want her tears to affect the efforts of others. However, Poplar Fruit understood that the little sister did not need money. She was already in university, and her family's situation was not so bad that she needed others to help her. What she needed was to know that her efforts were rewarded with the love of others. With this touching and sincere support, he believed that her family would soon see the dawn of hope. Chapter 1421. Cosplay, also known as role-playing, was popular in Japan, the United States, and thousands of young men and women who loved anime, including China. However, Poplar Fruit helplessly discovered that the director of the recent episodes of the show, Where Did Dad Go?, was definitely a middle-aged man. The response to the old man's cosplay from the previous trip was very good, so this time, there was a new and even more exaggerated cosplay. Lu Yi was made into a demonic Guanyin Bodhisattva. Hu Jun turned into a bull demon with an iron ring on his nose. Lin Yongjian was a hunchbacked earth eunuch, and Zhou Shimin was even more miserable. He carried a turtle shell and became a green ninja turtle. Under the banner of the show, Poplar Fruit was naturally not spared. He was directly stuffed into a sponge box, and after a series of smears, he became SpongeBob SquarePants. Well, Poplar Fruit actually fooled the smart Kiki with such a clumsy cosplay. Using this opportunity, Poplar Fruit, as a SpongeBob SquarePants, chatted with his daughter a lot. The topics included love and respect for parents, friendship between friends. Seeing that his daughter did not recognize him and completely treated him as her favorite anime character, Poplar Fruit asked a question that he wanted to know very much. Kiki, your papa and mama are married. Do you feel unhappy? In order to pretend to be SpongeBob SquarePants, Poplar Fruit even imitated Kiki's tone to speak. This way, Kiki would feel very close and would not be suspicious. I don't think so. Why would I feel unhappy? Chi-Chi asked in confusion. In Kiki's pure mind, the little girl had never considered whether she did not like Fong Beibei as her stepmother. To her, Fong Beibei was both her sister and mama, so there was no problem of a stepmother. But let me tell you a secret. Kiki pulled on SpongeBob SquarePants' clothes and said, "What secret?" Poplar Fruit was a little frightened at this moment, and even his voice became deep. Every time the little girl wanted to tell him a secret, she would turn into an adorable little girl who would cheat her father. Fortunately, Kiki was excitedly sharing her little secret with SpongeBob SquarePants and didn't notice the problem with Poplar Fruit's voice. That's right. My papa and mama are actually going to have a big wedding. It didn't happen before, so it was changed to next year. Kiki waved her hands and drew a big circle. These words were a little ambiguous and would probably cause controversy after the broadcast. Of course, Poplar Fruit knew what his daughter meant. He had a headache, but he had to explain the secret to the audience. You are talking about a big wedding. Are you talking about a big wedding? Yonggwa asked. Yes. The little girl nodded fiercely and said, Sister Shanshan bought me a super beautiful dress, but I couldn't wear it. Kiki felt a little regretful. She gestured to her height and said, Papa said that I grew very fast, and I can't wear the beautiful clothes I bought before. Then wait until next year, I can't wear my dress either. It doesn't matter. You can still buy new ones in the future. The new dress will definitely be more beautiful than the one you have now. Poplar Fruit stretched out his other hand and patted his daughter's shoulder gently to comfort her. In his prop suit, the left hand was the thumb and the right hand was the palm, so it was impossible to make other gestures. I think so too. The little girl had a good attitude. Actually, I think that your papa's wedding didn't happen because of his injury. He probably didn't want to change the time at the last minute, right? He had already prepared so much. Poplar Fruit explained. Yes, my papa was injured. He was so pitiful. He slept in bed for a long time. Kiki held her hands to her heart and said with some lingering fear, But my papa is super powerful. He woke up very quickly. Grandpa Doctor said that papa is a miracle. Poplar Fruit gently stroked his daughter's hair with his palm and said lovingly, Of course, your papa has to recover quickly, because he still has to protect you. The little girl smiled sweetly and was slightly shy. Then are you happy now? Papa's body has recovered, and then he can come out to play with you. Poplar Fruit asked. I'm happy. SpongeBob SquarePants, wait a minute, let's go back together, okay? Kiki was worried that SpongeBob SquarePants would be afraid, so she quickly took his hand and said, Don't be afraid, my papa is a very good person, and you are my good friend, he will definitely like you. It was impossible for them to meet. Poplar Fruit had already become SpongeBob SquarePants, so it was impossible for him to change into himself and meet her. He waved his hand and said, I'm sorry, Kiki, I'm afraid I can't meet your father. I can't stay outside for a long time. Soon, I will have to go back to the sea. In fact, Poplar Fruit was worried that his daughter would cry because she did not want SpongeBob SquarePants to leave. However, Poplar Fruit did not see that Kiki was very sad. She pondered for a moment and nodded her head in realization. The little girl had a deep understanding expression and said, I know, SpongeBob SquarePants, you can't stay on the ground for too long. That way, you will die from lack of water. Yes. That's the reason. Well, Kiki had found a reason for herself, so Poplar Fruit didn't have to worry about it anymore. He said with a smile. This was actually what Kiki had learned from watching cartoons. When SpongeBob SquarePants ran to land, he would indeed dry up and die. Then SpongeBob SquarePants, hurry up and go back. Hurry up and go back. The kind-hearted Chi-Chi became anxious. She quickly stood up and pushed Yonggwa's costume. Wait a minute, there's no need to be too anxious. I still have a little time before I have to go back to the sea, Poplar Fruit said with a smile. I have another question to ask you. Okay, ask away. But when it's time, you have to go home obediently. The little girl turned around and lectured her father. Your papa and mama are getting married. If they want to have a child, will you be unhappy? Poplar Fruit had always wanted to ask this question. It just so happened that he could ask it through SpongeBob SquarePants. No. Why would I be unhappy? Kiki had a puzzled expression again. Because many children don't like them to have a second child. Poplar Fruit didn't let go of this question easily this time. He spread out his hands and said, because they think that if Papa and Mama give birth to a second child, Papa and Mama won't like them anymore. I'm not afraid. You all want to lie to children. The little girl said with a smile. My Papa and Mama won't dislike me. They all love me very much. Yes, you have to believe in this. Poplar Fruit was a little moved, and his voice trembled a little. Yes, yes, there's more. SpongeBob SquarePants, let me tell you. I really want a younger brother or sister. Kiki whispered into SpongeBob SquarePants' ear. After saying that, the little girl giggled. Under the sunlight that broke through the fog in the morning, her smile was so sincere and sweet. Chapter 14:22. In the end, Poplar Fruit did not reveal SpongeBob SquarePants' true identity. Just like how Lu Yi did not reveal that Guanyin Pusa was himself, both of them wanted to leave a precious memory for their child. The sixth trip ended with a warm and emotional scene. Poplar Fruit and Kiki returned to Guangzhou and continued working on his Eurasian studies. Of course, Kiki had to continue attending kindergarten and Fong Beibei had to start her postgraduate studies. She was not as free as Poplar Fruit. However, Poplar Fruit had returned with a mission this time. After recording the show, producer Xie and the village chief had given them a mission. That was to invite a celebrity from the entertainment industry to participate in the next trip, which meant that they would be guests. This was a rare favor that the production team had given to the fathers. One had to know that a national-level variety show like Where's Dad Go? Had received so much attention from the audience that it was unknown how many movie and television crews wanted to invite people to participate in the promotion. This was also because the guests on Where's Dad Go were more fixed and there were almost no guests. That was why the production team did not give them any slips. However, every celebrity who could be on Where's Dad Go would receive a lot of attention. For example, last season's Huang Bai and Tong Dawei had gone to New Zealand to participate in the program's recording in order to promote their movie, Darling. Running Man was also a national-level variety show. Not only were there all kinds of guests vying to be on it, the few fixed guests on Running Man had also gained a lot of popularity. They had received so many movie invitations that their hands had gone limp. Of course, the production team did not say that any Tom, Dick, or Harry could be on the show. For the fixed guests to invite guests, the list of people had to be approved by the production team. Speaking of the invited guests, Poplar Fruit immediately thought of one person, Cheonjuan. When Poplar Fruit was hospitalized in Beijing, Cheonjuan had come to visit him. He had said that he was filming a movie. Unexpectedly, a movie that was going to be released on the big screen. Only Poplar Fruit, who did not do anything, did not know about this. The preparation for this movie began in April last year. Later, they finally started production with Han Han, whom they had worked with before. Yao Shou was the director. He never expected that most of the original cast and many movie actors would join this movie. In terms of momentum, it could not be compared to the movies of many directors and actors who had achieved before. However, Cheonjuan still pushed back his schedule for half a year to join the parent company's annual blockbuster. He and Baiku were both important protagonists. When Poplar Fruit was injured, the movie was in full swing. Cheonjuan was still able to ask for leave to visit him, which made Poplar Fruit very gratified. Later, Poplar Fruit recovered from his injuries and returned to Yangcheng. It was already late August, and the movie was finally completed. Calling Beast and the others brought Cheonjuan to Yangcheng to visit Poplar Fruit again. This friendship and camaraderie touched Poplar Fruit so much that he didn't want to reject it. Therefore, when the production team mentioned this matter, Poplar Fruit immediately thought of Cheonjuan. After receiving Poplar Fruit's name list, producer Xie was not surprised. He knew about the relationship between Poplar Fruit and the country's new popular actor, Cheonjuan. After some comparison, producer Xie realized that Cheonjuan was really suitable for the theme of their next trip. Didn't Cheonjuan become famous after filming a period drama after Unexpectedly? That guy was extraordinarily handsome when he wore ancient clothes. His aquiline nose quickly helped him attract a large number of female fans. After returning, Poplar Fruit contacted Cheonjuan and called Cheonjuan, who was on vacation in his hometown in Yangcheng, over. He invited a few good friends to have an outdoor barbecue and told him about this matter. Sure enough, not only did Cheonjuan agree, he was also very surprised. There were not many opportunities to appear in front of the national audience like this, especially when his own work was about to be released. Cheonjuan was almost grateful to Poplar Fruit. He felt that this was another support from Poplar Fruit. Although Cheonjuan was already a second-tier film and television actor, he had experienced a lot of hardships since he was young. He had always placed himself in a very low position, especially when facing a benefactor like Poplar Fruit who had helped him greatly like a life mentor. Moreover, this year's Poplar Fruit was already a popular figure. He was popular all over the world. After calculating the time after this episode's recording, the broadcast should be in mid-October. There was still a long time before the month of promotion before the movie was released. However, no matter what, this was a very good opportunity. Not to mention promotion, it was good to warm up. Cheonjuan immediately called Wan He and Tianyi in Beijing and asked them to discuss the specific details of the cooperation with Mango TV. Cheonjuan could not hold back and rushed back to Beijing the next day. He was also considered a workaholic. After all, he did not have any relatives to take care of. As for Poplar Fruit, after a week of peace, he was about to begin his 7th journey. Of course, this was also the second to last journey. He suddenly felt that time had passed very quickly. Everyone had just gathered together for the first time in May. In the blink of an eye, it was almost time for the program to end. Of course, it did not mean that everyone would not be friends after the program ended. After so many episodes of the program's recording, Poplar Fruit and Kiki had formed deep friendships with the other 4 pairs of father and son. And because the 5 families in this season were not the type to be blinded by greed, none of them treated the recording of the program as a stepping stone to fame. Instead, they saw it as a rare opportunity to bring their children out to play while working. Of course, this also had to do with the fact that the 5 guests had been famous for a long time, especially Lu Yi, Hu Jun and Lin Yongjian. They had a wide range of acting careers and had achieved great things. They did not need a small bonus from the program to increase their qualifications. Poplar Fruit did not need to be mentioned. He had no intention of joining the entertainment industry. He was only here to accompany his daughter to play. No matter what, after the program's recording, they would still be good brothers. Kiki and the other 4 children would also still be good friends. However, for the new journey, it seemed like the program team was going to create some trouble. The night before the departure, Poplar Fruit and Kiki received the mission card and the props and costumes sent by the program team at home. Please wear the costumes provided by the program team and take the public transportation system to reach the portal of time. Poplar Fruit finished reading and looked at the cameraman in confusion. Where is the portal of time? On the other side, Fong Beibei and Kiki curiously opened the costumes sent by the program team. Fong Beibei burst out laughing. She covered her mouth and grabbed Poplar Fruit's arm, saying, "Uncle, look! You are going to cosplay again. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."